Please rise for the pledge.
They can realize one's done is to pay for it.
Councilman Francis, can you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We can have a moment of silence for the men and women in the armed forces. Thank you. Yep, we can listen to public participation, but cannot take any votes until our two councilmen that are coming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Jeff Winter, please.
I agreed to switch places tonight with Jeff McBriarty because one Jeff always deserves another, right? So, Jeff Winter, 22 Morey Road. I'm here to speak tonight, especially about transparency in government, especially when it comes to bidding on public projects for the town, whether they be funds from the state or elsewhere. And also just committee work in general and why it's important that the public be notified of meetings when they happen. In your packets tonight, you have a document regarding the bar grant proposal and accepting the bar grant proposal. But I think you should read it carefully before you consider it, and I would also suggest that you postpone the vote on it tonight. The reason being is that it was there involves an executive committee session where items were discussed that should not have been. It should have been open to the public. If you read the recommended proposal, it actually talks about how the committee held 2 executive sessions on December 3rd and 4th to receive presentations from vendors. Those executive sessions are fine. There's no problem with that because it's proprietary information. The committee then met on, I believe it was December 18th, and had discussions. And at that discussions, they agreed that they would put together questions for phone calls for references. Those references were made January 7th through January 14th. The next committee meeting was January 15th. At that meeting, there was an executive session. They said no votes were taken, no choices were made, no decisions were made. I was at that meeting, so I don't know what happened in that executive session, but I can tell you that nothing else was discussed in terms of the vendors after that. However, suddenly at the next meeting on January 22nd, they chose to approve a particular vendor. And if you look at your packets, not only did they approve the vendor, there's actually a final report. And that final report is extremely detailed and focused exactly on what you have in front of you tonight, that vendor. Now, if they made those phone calls between January 7th and 14th, they only had one meeting between then and the 22nd, and that was the 15th, and they held an executive session. So if they made decisions involving a $170,000 grant, it had to have been at that meeting, or else it was done illegally elsewhere. So I don't know how that report was written. I don't know who wrote the report on the bar grant committee, but that discussion should have been public, every single bit of it. Because after all, you've got the information in front of you. There's nothing proprietary that needed to be withheld. You've got all the cost information, you've got other information, and you could certainly get the presentation information. I know, Mayor, you attended some of those, so you saw their presentations. and those are available. So why did they not discuss this in public? That's a really good question. And before you make this decision tonight, you should carefully consider as to whether or not that was an illegal meeting. So I think you should delay that. Further, this committee, the Bar Grant Committee and its, I guess you would call it its twin committee, the Riverfront Revitalization Committee.
Jeff, you're at 4 minutes.
Thank you, sir. They have been delinquent on agendas to the public. And when I say delinquent, they don't even file them half the time. For the Bar Grant Committee, they had 12 meetings, gatherings, what have you, last year. Of those 12, only 5 of the 12 were not noticed. And they were not noticed until I filed the FOI in January. How can you conduct the public business by doing that? And the same thing is true with the Riverfront Committee. They didn't even file some agendas and minutes from 2017, or minutes from 2018, or an annual schedule of meetings that you're supposed to do. And by the way, did you guys ever hear about Riverfest? Do you know if it made money? Do you know if it lost money? How'd they do? They haven't reported it to you. They haven't reported it anywhere, other than in their minutes where they said it was approximately $18,000 in income and almost an equal amount of expenses. But is that true? Are they off by maybe 10 or even 15%? That's public information. That's taxpayer dollars. If it's positive, great. But I don't think it is. Otherwise, we'd hear about it. So I think, first of all, make sure, very sure about your vote tonight. And second of all, this committee and its leadership is out of control. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff McBride, please.
Jeff McBride, 288 Kent Road. I'm going to be speaking about what's going to be in the forefront the next couple of months or so, the Board of Education and their budget. Can you tell me why New Milford is the greatest little town in America? Some here will say diversity and opportunity. Some will say freedom and freedom. Some will say so we should just keep it that way. So I ask, why is New Milford the greatest little town in America? And I say it is not the greatest little town in America. So let's talk about it. The Board of Education is the cause of this change, in my estimation. The Board of Ed seems to feel that people tax dollars account for pennies in the equation when it does not. They do not care about votes or money or time spent here trying to resolve town problems or any news lines in the paper or to save everyone as much as possible. They drive forward with their own blind agenda with no conscience as to end result. You want to know why people do not like the Board of Ed? Because they are wasteful, in my opinion. If they are supposed to be so smart, how come they end up wasting so many ways when it comes to education? With a straight face, they will tell you, the residents of this town, that America is star-spangled and we can always afford any yearly increase they put before us because they have the mindset that we have tons of money just waiting for them to use each year because of this. They go unchecked. Just in case the taxpayers cannot see beyond the unchecked manner in the way the Board of Education presents its half-baked and underhanded methods to convince you to spend money on the future of the kids here, let me ask this question. What does the taxpayer get in return for its investment on the Board of Education? Okay, the Board of Education has never once, since I have lived in New Milford since 1964, given an account as to what we shall gain by our investment. Never. There are some things you should understand. There is no actual evidence to support the fact that we are the greatest little town in America anymore because of the blatant misuse of taxpayer money. Have they ever once told you where we stand in literacy, or in math, or in science, or in life expectancy, or median household income, or where we stand in the labor force today? They won't tell you this because they don't know. They cannot tell you how much they have applied for an aid from the Connecticut Lotto Funds for Education because they have never applied. They can't even tell you that we lead the world in only 3 things: number of people in prison, number of people who believe angels are real, and defense spending, which we spend more than the 26 richest countries in the world combined. And each year they ask us for more from the residents of this town. Approximately 70% of the town's whole budget is for education this year, and the rest of this for the council to use to take care of and appease 30,000 residents. That's crazy. When we succumb to this kind of blatant robbery of the citizens of New Milford, which seems as though each spring we become a small part of the worst generation ever, period. So when we continue to allow them to run this town, and not you, you have failed as being the leaders of the greatest little town in America, and we become the worst little town in America, period. We used to be great, and education was for all, and all got an equal chance at the future, and all got a solid education, and they all graduated with a skill set, but not anymore. When the money we waste on education each year continues to grow by leaps and bounds, and we have no solid investment for the return on our buck, then the children going out the doors when they graduate are left to fend for themselves because they are not educated, period. The majority of the students graduating each year are left to work at McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Five Guys, Walmart, or any small minimum wage business is because we failed them all and did not educate them, period.
Jeff, you're at 4 minutes, please.
As citizens of New Milford, we have to start standing up for what is right and take control of our little town. Take it out of the hands of the Board of Education and put the educational system on notice that we aren't going to buckle anymore, and that we need to have a system that will produce productive students and not just push them through with the no child left behind mentality. Asking for $65 million for education with no positive production or return on our investment is hazardous to the future of this town, our children, and the taxpayer. Please do not buckle to these money mongers anymore, please. We have a failing school system population already. And just for fact, the last 3 years, the Connecticut Lotto had $127 million transferred to the general fund because nobody applied for that money. And one of the towns that did not apply in the last 3 years for part of the $127 million was the town of New Milford, and this is ridiculous. The money's
Jeff, I'm
there.
being over generous, please. Wrap it up.
Okay, sir, thank you. So do not apply, if they did not apply for assistance, and I'd like to know why. Because when I asked the superintendent of the schools, Mr. Smith, why, he had no answer. He didn't know why. So that's the kind of people that's running the Board of Education, and that's crazy. Just my estimation. More to follow in the future meetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Mayor, that's the end of the list.
Thank you. Next is mayor's remarks. I'll be brief. First, I'd like to welcome our new tax assessor, Brian Lastra, to the town. He comes from the Danbury Assessor's Office, and we welcome him, and he started his day today, and we're excited to have him. Secondly, I'm glad to report Lieutenant Larry Ash is back with the New Milford PD. I'm very happy to see that the lieutenant is back. There were some accusations posed against Mr. Ash. An independent organization did take a look at these accusations, and they were unfounded. So we're very excited to have Lieutenant Ash back. Next, as we are going into the budget season, the Board of Education is going through their budget process, and we are going through ours as well. And that starts with the department heads bringing in their proposed budgets. I've been going through their budgets with the department heads. What happens then is I meet with them again, and I also have our finance director. We go through those, and then we create the mayor's proposed budget. That will then be given to the town council and the Board of Finance to review, along with department heads coming up and bringing their budgets to the council and the Board of Finance. If they want to make adjustments to that budget, as well as the Board of Ed comes as well, they make those adjustments, and then we send it on to the taxpayer so the taxpayer can vote on the budget. So we're in that process, and there'll be more upcoming with that. Next, this Friday is Wear Red Day, and that's for heart health. So I hope everyone can wear red if they can to show their support for heart health. Also, at 12 noon, we're going to be celebrating that and also celebrating Donate for Life. And Donate for Life is an organization that talks about the need for people to donate organs, tissue for those in need. We'll be hoisting the Donate for Life flag as we did last year. And also a good friend of mine, Brian, will also be here, and he's going to celebrate his 1-year anniversary with a brand new heart. So God bless. Next, as I met a very nice young lady, her name's Louise, up at Candlewood Valley Nursing Home, 106 years old. God bless. Outstanding. Also, kind of a couple quick updates on the library. I've spoken with the library construction committee with their architects. They're preparing, and we met with our finance director as far as looking at the funding and also getting the architects up to speed with the Connecticut Historic Preservation Trust, as they just want to tweak a couple of things, and we'll be bringing that back to the council as well. Also, our Municipal Roads Committee will be talking more about it tonight, but I'm excited. We're starting our second year of our roads program, of which they'll expound more on it. But I'm excited of a much-needed roads program. This will be the second year, and I'm excited about that. I'd also like to thank everyone that attended the January 19th Coffee with the Mayor. This is what we do every month. Please stay tuned either on Facebook or Twitter or on our town website for the Coffee with the Mayor dates. I appreciate the chief who's in the back that attended the last one as well. That's a chance to come in and speak your mind about what's concerning you with our great town. I'd also like to talk about a program. I had quite a lot of response from our citizenry, and that's with the signs that are on the curves. And that's called the Horizontal Curve Grant. And that was done by the prior administration. I held a public meeting on 1/8/19 with the state of Connecticut, with our Public Works team to find out more about this, why we have so many signs on the curve, and what can we do about it. So one of the things we're trying to see if there is a way we can mitigate it. Ridgefield is looking at reducing the speeds on the roads where these signs are to see if they can get less signage. That's one of the things that we're looking at as well. We're going to be having a public informational meeting on the 5th of February at 7 p.m. right here, so that you, the public, can give us input on these signs, what you think about them. And then lastly, I'd like to congratulate Councilman Dr. Mullen on the birth of his grandson. God bless, and wish him a long life.
Set?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, item number 4, move to accept all items on our consent agenda, which include item A, regular council meeting minutes from January 14th, and item B, youth agency request to accept a donation of $720 from Applebrook Auction to be used to offset expenses on the mother-son dance.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to add for our minutes that the Applebrook auction money would be placed in account number 1044-190-144-714 per their youth agency request.
Second again.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Great. Item number 5, move the following appointments and reappointments. I won't read them all unless you want me to. Old Boardman Bridge Committee consists of 5 members and 2 alternates, all the January 12th, 2019 through July 11th, 2019. Library Modernization and Construction, that is changing, adding to become a 15-member temporary committee. All terms are January 10th, 2019 through July 9th, 2019. The addition of one of those members that was not in the prior group was Russ Postauer. The other 5 would be added when we have people.
Okay.
Lake Lillinois Authority, There are 3 delegates. It's a 4-year term. We have 2 people, January 28th, 2019 to January 31st, 2020 for Dave Lathrop, and Brian Rogers is January 28th, 2019 through 1/31/2022. Economic Development, Corey Linder, that is removed from the agenda. That's not happening.
And Mr. Lender had explained that he's having a child and didn't know if he could make that commitment, so that's why we're taking that off for now.
So we'll look for somebody
Yep.
else. Okay, and then the final one is the Library Board of Trustees. It will be addition of Paul Partlow, a term of January 28th, 2019 through 12/31/2019.
Second.
Any discussion? Tom?
I know you have another 5 members coming on the Library Construction Modernization Committee, as we've discussed before. I personally would like to see people with some very heavy construction background in this. I know a lot of the folks were on the original committee, but this is a serious project that needs serious oversight by people that have done this before or are doing this currently. So I just encourage you, and I will volunteer on it if need be. But as we all want this library to be perfect, so the more brains we can bring to the table, the better.
Absolutely.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Item 6, council moves into executive session, and we'd like to discuss collective bargaining agreement, including recent negotiations related thereto. We invite the Personnel Director, Town Attorney, and Chief of Police.
And also Greg, the Finance Director.
Oh, I'm sorry, Greg. Sorry, Director of Finance.
Second.
Didn't see.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Executive session, no, we took no motions or no votes. Councilman
Okay,
Francis?
so we'll move to item 7. I'd like to move on ratification of the collective bargaining agreement between the Town of New Milford, Connecticut and United Public Service Union, Unit 47, the New Milford Police Union, beginning retroactively to July 1st, 2018, and ending on June 30, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Item 8, update and possible action on the Lillis oil tank removal replacement. And that's item A, and item B is discussion and possible action on the acceptance of USA Communities process for roof replacement. It's under the Board of Ed.
Dr. Tracy?
Mr. Mayor, if I
Doc.
could extend the courtesy to Dr. Tracy.
Absolutely.
And if any board members have any questions.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
We have a full contingent here, and we hope we don't accommodate if you have any questions, but I'm sure you won't.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Quick update on the oil tank work that we've been doing over the last few months. We did complete a project at Hill and Plain School back in November, December, and as some of you know, we ran into some surprises over there with an electrical connection box that was on top of the old tank and under the ground. So the decision was made to work around that, leave the old tank in place rather than try to work underneath this electrical stuff, which could have disrupted the operation of the school. So we shifted instead to an above-ground tank. That's all in, it's done. The extra work ran about $60,000 beyond what we had originally planned, and that project was on the Board of Education's dime. And so working from their capital reserve account, we covered that, and the project is finished. Then we turned to the tank in the parking lot behind the Lillis Administration Building over at 50 East Street. And making good progress, got to the old tank, and then discovered a couple of serious problems. One, a considerable amount of ledge under the old tank, which meant that the old tank was not buried at the level that it's supposed to be buried at. I don't know what the regulations were back in the olden days, but regulations now require the top of the tank to be at least so far underneath the parking lot. And in order to achieve that, it was necessary to eliminate a substantial amount of ledge to give us a hole deep enough to put the tank in. And the next surprise we ran into was an old sewer line running out of the back of the building. And those of you who are familiar with the property, under the parking lot, down the hill to the main sewer line, to the I think it's to the east of the property. And so that had to be dealt with, and a lot of digging and replacement of pipe and so forth. That's been done. The sewer is back the way it should be. But as a result of that, we now had to move the tank to the north several feet to stay away from the new sewer line. Bottom line, and I think you may have seen a spreadsheet that we passed around on Friday, that project is also running about $61,000 beyond what was originally appropriated by this body. The figures that I presented also include an $18,500 contingency for the balance of the work. We still need to put the tank in, cover it over, and then trench from the tank to the building and install the oil lines back to the school. That should go easier, I hesitate to say, but should go easier because the oil lines are nowhere near at the depth that the bottom of the tank is. So we're hoping that will allow us to avoid any further ledge issues. I made the decision back when we ran into this trouble around Christmas time to proceed with the project. I considered it urgent that the work get done for three reasons. One, we're under pressure from the Department of Environmental Protection, the State Department, to get this work done. The tank's lifetime actually expired December 31st, so we want to make sure the state knows we're not dragging our feet, we're hitting some headwinds, but we're going to get this done as quickly as we can. Second, we've got a big canyon open in the back of that building, which is more than an inconvenience for citizens who want to visit our building and have to park out on the dirt lot there. But it's also, it's a hazard, and it could even be an attractive nuisance. We're thankful that the fencing has been good and nobody's bothered it, but I regard that as a problem to be dealt with. And then the longer it stays open, every time it rains, the walls of the pit cave in, we got to dig more out, so we're incurring more cost the longer we leave it open. So based on that, I made the decision to proceed. Kevin Monrett here has been great in working with the contractors and keeping the work going. I'll be reporting to the school board night after next to let them know the same information that we're sharing with you. Checked with the mayor back late December, and we've had a couple of conversations about this as the work has gone on. We hope we're getting to the end. We hope we won't need the contingency, but including that, we're asking you to appropriate an additional $80,000 that will allow us to complete the work. Obviously, whatever we don't need, if we don't run into further problems, we would return to you and appreciate your help. Let me stop with that. I don't know whether any of the board members or Kevin wanted to add, or perhaps Mr. Mayor, you or the other council members have some questions.
Councilman Smith.
And so, Dr. Tracy, I know that you must have relied on someone else with respect to the pricing to feel comfortable with it. So who is that, so we can ask them the questions that we have regarding the pricing?
You don't think an old social studies teacher knows?
No, I think you're smart. I think you're smarter than that.
Kevin, can you help out with that?
So what size tank was in the ground, and what size tank are we proposing to put in?
10,000 gallons is the answer to both.
So what's the minimum cover needed over the tank?
The minimum cover now is, I believe, and I can double check, 18 to 24 inches. We were previously only 3 inches under asphalt. As a matter of fact, when we got to the bottom of the hole and removed the old steel tank, we could see where our predecessors had stopped excavating because they hit the same ledge that we were hitting just recently.
So if we need 24 inches of cover, the tank's sitting at home plane, right?
Yes,
That's right.
So that's an 8-foot diameter tank, so we need 10-foot depth.
No, you need more because it has to be completely wrapped in pea gravel. So we're down to a depth of about 15, 16 feet.
Okay. So why didn't we go to a smaller tank then to eliminate the blasting, the removal of the ledge?
We still had the tank on hand from the Mill and Plain
What would the
project.
restocking fee have been on that tank and go to like a 6,000 gallon tank?
I don't remember offhand, but we did end up purchasing a 6,000 gallon above ground for Hill and Plain. The only problem would be where do we locate it at E Street where it's an active parking lot?
No, I'm saying underground, because I looked up that tank manufacturer. A 6,000 gallon tank actually has a 2 foot less diameter, so that's 2 foot less of ledge you would have to remove.
Right.
The tank also would have been $6,000 less in expense, so not only would you not have the expense of the $25,000 in ledge removal, you'd be saving $6,000 on the tank as well, so that'd be a savings of $31,000, plus you wouldn't have the trucking of all the extra material on the order of $8,640, $8,600 for compaction, and the $5,500 for moving it to the town garage.
Well, you would have had more compaction because we still had to remove boulders and ledge from the existing hole. So we're actually making that hole bigger in order to get rid of the obstacles in our way. And
But
to
your
get-
written response said you're filling it with pea stone.
Well, we have to fill it in with whatever fits the hole. We can fill in with soil whenever able and backfill with pea gravel as the code requires. But to get back to your original question, why didn't we go with a 6,000 gallon tank? We actually pursued that, but it would add another 10 to 12 week lead time on purchasing the tank, and that wasn't an option for the DEP.
So we didn't dig any test pits to see how deep ledge was and how deep the tank was before we started the $95,000 project that's now turning into a
No,
$175,000
that was not,
project.
that was not specified.
We did do some type of a ground survey that,
Yes, we did underground penetrating radar. We did call before you dig.
So if we did the ground penetrating radar, didn't that give you the approximate depth to the top of the tank?
No, it only tests for utilities and any sort of underground issues that we may find. It couldn't see the ledge through the existing steel tank.
No. The ground penetrating radar, when we're locating utilities like that,
Mhm.
it tells us the approximate depth to it, which would
Correct.
have told you to the top of the tank.
Correct, but
So that would have told you the tank was a couple inches under the ground. So before we started the project with the ground penetrating radar, because this is what we do for a living, I'm a civil engineer, we would have known that it didn't have proper cover. So before we started the project, we would have known that we should go with an alternative tank. So I have more questions. I have a lot of questions. So is the ledge that was removed still on site today, the piles of ledge that are in the back corner?
yes,
Okay, so in your response, it says that the monthly rental of the jackhammer, the 7,500 pound hammer, is $95.71 plus 2,000 mobilization. It says this is not a daily or hourly charge. We've been using the jackhammer for 2 to 3 weeks. So the jackhammer's gone now?
no, it's still on site.
The jackhammer on site's a 550 pound hammer, not 7,500. There is no way on earth, this is my business, okay? So I had 2 different contractors come in. We're getting taken for a ride by our contractor. That hammer is like, take a 7,500 pound hammer. There's like 20 to 30 yards of ledge that were removed, total. Because there's 2 piles back there. And that's not a triaxle back there, that's just a regular dumpster truck that moved that material. And a 7,500 pound hammer would have removed that in literally 4 hours. So to say that we rented that for a month, they're lying to you. That hammer is not on site. I can tell you as a fact right now, your contractor is lying to you. Then it says excavating and rock disposal, $13,200 extra. But the tank only shifted north about 10 feet, right?
About 12 feet, that's right.
And that costs us $13,200 in extra excavation to remove an extra 40 yards?
It also had
That's
to-
$300 a yard.
it also had to go down another 8 feet.
No.
The depth
The,
of
the existing tank diameter was 8 feet.
I understand
The
that.
cover was about 6 inches. Now we're going down another 5 feet, 6 feet max. And if we used the right tank, we wouldn't have had to go down any more because we would have just had this 6 foot diameter tank instead of an 8 foot. We could have held the bottom of the current tank and then had our 2 feet of cover. So then we got this jackhammer rental number, which is absolutely inaccurate. We have the excavating and rocks disposal number, which is absolutely inaccurate. We have the moving dirt to backfield for parking usage of $86.40. They say that this takes 2 days using 3 employees at $4,300 a day. Now first, they're assuming that this material is not coming back. This doesn't make any sense to me because this material has to come back into the hole, but I guess if it's frozen, you're saying you're going to use pea stone, right?
That's right.
So if you're using pea stone doesn't need to be compacted, but we're going to give them an extra $8,600 to compact pea stone, which doesn't need to be compacted by code.
All those prices were just estimates based on what could happen. That's not
But
to
we
say-
know we know what's happening because now the material's been moved. We were told in this that it took them 3 days with 3 guys, which I don't even know what the third guy does because you got your loader operator and the guy doing the dumpster. And I can tell you, if you know what you're doing, it's not going to take more than 2 days. And we're paying each guy, on average, $183 per hour. A regular triaxle, which holds 16 yards of material, which is double that truck, is $90 an hour with a guy in it. So they're taking us for a ride on that number. The extra compaction, it's absurd. If we have the same size tank and we're over excavating slightly, you're literally there with a jumping jack, maybe an extra $500, and then clean fill disposed at the town garage, which based on here it says. First it says how many yards of clean fill was taken. This number greatly depends on the weather, so it's impossible to tell how much frozen will be removed. How many yards of clean fill that was taken to DPW was not part of the original contract to be removed. Under a normal tank replacement of the same size, there shouldn't be any extra fill. This was an abnormal tank removal. But all we did was go 10 feet further, so the tank's 8 foot diameter, so you go 8 by 10 by 15, right? Something like that. So that's, let me just run that number quick, because I want to have these numbers, because it's important. So that's an extra 40 yards of material, right? Then you figure you got to go another 4 feet deep, right? That hole was something like 50 by 25 by 4. So we're talking another 160. So we're talking 200 yards of material, of which we're going to reuse a portion of it. So let's assume we're taking 150 yards to Public Works, right? So when we do that, it's costing us $36 a yard to move the material to DPW. A normal trucking company charges about $6.
I think that's an oversimplification of what's going on because of the amount of
Okay, so
boulders.
please explain so I can understand,
The amount of
because this
boulders
is
and ledge
absurd.
that we encountered kept causing the hole to have to get bigger and bigger because the boulders had to be excavated to get to the depth we're looking for.
So where's the boulders? Because here's pictures of the, so is this the where are the boulders? Because this is the site.
The ones that were able to be hauled off were, and then whatever is kept in the back is clean fill to be reused if possible.
So where's the boulder? I mean, there can't be any more material than was here. I mean, what was there, a truckload of boulders maybe?
No, several.
How many?
That was the reason why you had to rent the jackhammer for a month, is that we were encountering them daily.
But if we're removing the boulders, they got a machine from W.I. Clark there that could lift the boulders. Why would we jackhammer the boulders when we could just load them in the truck and take them away?
Well, there was a part of that, and then the jackhammer was utilized to remove the ledge. So there's two different
So do we have the
issues.
tickets of the material removed?
No, not yet. That's why I said that what you have in front of
So
you
how are you before us with the request if you don't even have the cost to date
Because
compared
we-
to the cost you're asking?
Right,
I'm
because-
just telling you, I'm not in favor of this. This is absurd. I can tell you with over almost 20 years of experience, and I'm telling the Board of Ed, of construction experience, these numbers are absolutely absurd, unacceptable, and ridiculous. I don't know who's in charge of overseeing the project, but at this point, I'm very concerned, extremely concerned, because we entrusted with you on these projects large amounts of money. You may remember at the budget, I am the one who fought to give the oil tank money on the town side of the budget. Now the Hill and Plain tank goes over $60,000. What was that, like a $90,000 job to start with, something like that? And now we have a $97,000 job. That's $87,000 over budget, potentially. That's unacceptable. Because if we just did a little bit of work up front, like I'm talking test pits that would have cost $1,200, we would have had no change orders. We would have saved $87,000. Now we have the sewer line, right? Sewer line's $5,000. They replaced about 30 feet of sewer line. So that's about 100, well, they did a clean out too. That's about, what, 6 feet tall? So 36 feet of pipe. So that's $150 per foot for pipe. That's normally 20 to 30 bucks. So every single one of these prices is like 5 times reality. And you said the oil tank line to the building's gonna go in a different location, but the oil tank line's right coming into the hole. So if you're putting the oil tank line back in the general location of where it is, we know ledge is 10 to 12 feet deep, why are we asking for $18,500 to replace the oil tank line from the oil tank to the building when we know ledge is at about 10 feet, maybe there's some boulders that need to be removed. But I wish, if I could do this for a living, I'd quit my job tomorrow. But I can tell you I am voting no to this request because at some point, people need to be held accountable. Because when projects like this are managed, we are entrusting people to manage them properly. And this project is not being managed properly, and was not managed properly, and is unacceptable. I value the taxpayer's dollar. When I went to fight and battle back last June for the oil tank money for all the oil tanks, this is the last thing on earth I would have expected to happen.
Councilwoman Francis?
I'm not sure if this is a question for you or Dr. Tracy or Nancy, but in the normal process of doing things with the Board of Ed, such as this, who oversees? I mean, to me, what stands out is if you're digging and you're still hitting ledge and you're digging and you're bringing in and you're taking out ledge and you're taking out material, at some point, someone should have had someone to go to and say, gee, this is what we're doing. It seems like it's costing a lot of money. Time equals money. And maybe someone would have said, how about a smaller tank? How about 2 small tanks? How about something else? What is your process? Who oversees, not just what you do, but anything? I mean, we've had roof issues, people replacing shingles and nobody knows why it's approved, how it got approved, but hey, the guy went out and spent 10 grand every year. So I have to go along with Paul. I'm not at all happy that this is dollars that we could certainly use in other places. Not saying you didn't need to do the project, of course. But at some point, somebody has to say, you just don't keep digging and removing things without somebody saying, gee, I wouldn't do this in my own life. I mean, if it was your dollar, would you have done this in your own backyard? I don't think so. You probably would have called somebody in to say, this seems like it's out of line, or what else can we do? I don't know that it's out of line, but what else are my options? So what's the process, Board of Ed?
Well, I can help you out there. Dave Lawson, Chairman of the Board. Throughout this process, we were in communication with the mayor's office throughout the process.
But he's not an expert in that either. I'm asking what you do.
Well, you're asking me about...
What do you do when your facilities people or whoever's working on a job, David? Who do they go to say, I think we got a problem here, or I'm already
Right.
way
Yes.
over my budget?
And they have routinely let us know that. We did have an extra tank because we ran into similar problems at Hill and Plain. I'm sorry,
But who do you go to if they go to you?
Szymanski, that you disagree with the prices. The contract...
I don't disagree with
No.
I completely, wholeheartedly believe they're not true.
Okay, but we
Just
don't
to
have,
be clear.
but we don't have the contractors here or anything like that. Bottom line is, this project has to be completed. DEEP...
The tank's removed, DEP doesn't care now, there's no contamination,
Okay,
correct?
fair enough.
Okay.
So, but we do have to, if we want to halt the project, fine, we can halt the project, but let's
But David, please, I hate to interrupt you, but just back up. Before you go all the way off on this road, I just asked you a question. What is the process in the Board of Ed
Process?
for somebody who's working on a project that is quite a bit of money here, 97 or whatever it started at? At some point, it went over budget. Or they thought it was going to, or they could see it was
Right,
going to.
it
What do
goes,
they do?
it goes to our facilities.
And then what does the
committee.
facilities person do?
They bring it, facilities committee.
And that
And
is, then what do they do?
They bring, well, they make a decision, advisory decision, so to
Are
speak.
they allowed to make a decision no matter what the value?
It's not binding. So the answer is yes, and
Well, I
it
guess
goes
this
to the
one
full
was.
board.
Did you know?
As the interim superintendent, I'm responsible for everything that goes on in the system, subject to the direction of the board. Mr. Monrette kept me posted as we got into trouble in December. We did consider the notion of going to a smaller tank, as he mentioned, and decided not to do that. I did have some conversations with the mayor beginning in late December and again on the 17th of January. The board meets next on the 30th, and per board policy, I have the authority in an urgent or emergency situation to proceed. So I made the decision to do that, and I'll be reporting to the board Wednesday night, I guess, on the status, and we'll show them as much information as we have
So the
about the
process
physical work
is
and
slower
the
than the
cost.
actual project, in this case
Yeah.
and in other cases. Was the contractor ever brought in in front of the Board of Ed or the Facilities Committee to say, hey, what's up here?
I did not do
I have to
that.
say, I don't know that much about excavation, but the very first thing I looked at was the jackhammer. And the first thing I said was, wow, a 7,500-pound hammer, that's pretty big, and it took all this time. You know what I asked myself on this note? How much would it have cost to buy one instead of the renting? So I'm a little concerned, maybe a contractor should have been brought in to talk a little bit. I just say, would you do something like this if it was your own dollars, if it was your own home or your own backyard? Think about that. This is extrapolated up. This is really a project that's double what it was supposed to be. And you're not sure about those end numbers, right, Kevin? So it might even be more. And I just don't understand how you can act as if by saying, David, that, well, you know, it has to be done. Well, like Paul just pointed out, Deep doesn't care now, it's out of the ground.
Well, I do care. I do care. I think that, you know, we have a building that we need to take care of. You know, that's up to this town council here. Now, might I add, I will say, in this request, I could just, yeah, I think under the circumstances, the change order number 3, it would be reasonable to void that, because that's purely a contingency. There's nothing there.
So we agreed to change order 2.
Pardon me?
Have we agreed to pay
No.
change order 2 to the contractor?
No, it's not paid.
Well, then I am respectfully requesting as a taxpayer, we refuse that change order. I'm also respectfully requesting, as a taxpayer, not as a council person, but as someone who pays taxes in this town, that the employee responsible for overseeing this project be held responsible. This is unacceptable. And I would say the same thing to Mayor Bass if it was happening on the town side. And if the council disagrees with me, please speak up now.
I completely concur with
Did the
Councilman
contractor
Zelinski.
give you justification, Kevin, during all of this?
Yes.
I mean, Paul just started out by saying that the jackhammer is not 7,500, it's 550 pounds. So,
I mean,
nobody
here-
caught
here-
that.
Here it is.
but-
I mean, look at it. You can tell.
We-
That
we-
fits on their small little excavator.
We've had 3 different jackhammers there throughout the course of the project.
Well, and does somebody look over the invoices, are they changed? I don't know, I guess
So the
I
scope
don't
of
know.
services then, you said they're jackhammering up boulders. So in our contract, in the scope of services, we said when we were removing the tank and the material around the tank, that they could charge us an extra for boulders?
No, boulders was not part of the
But you
original
just said
scope of
earlier,
work.
we paying for this jackhammer to jackhammer those boulders that are in the original contract.
Let him finish his answer.
That's- What I said was we were using the jackhammer to get through the ledge. We were removing boulders as they became known to us. The contract did not call for that because typically a tank comes out within 30 years and it was already in there based on DEP regs. This is not the case. This is kind of a abnormal tank, as the note says, that was kind of put in however they wanted to.
But it says we've been using the jackhammer for 2 to 3 weeks. A 7,500-pound jackhammer would remove that 20 to 30 yards of ledge that's in the back in less than a day. That's a fact.
I would disagree.
I will take you to several sites, Kevin, that are active right now, so we can show you.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Mr. Nail?
Yeah, I guess my simple question is, you know, my mom was selling her house and there's a little wall that is cracked. And I called up Paul and I said, Paul, can you look at this and tell me if I need to get it replaced or not, if it's structurally deficient or not? Because guess what? Paul, I know, is an expert in it. The same thing with what Tom was saying about the library committee is, why don't we have more construction people on the committee? This town is full of people that will volunteer their time because of their expertise in different areas, and I just don't understand why we don't use them. Why we pay people to do it, why we pay experts to do things, why we don't just take the people in this town that are willing to give their time because they love this town and use their expertise. And now we're here after the fact saying, looking at this bill, look like it's padded, and the point you said was, well, these people probably knew that we had this done because the DEP had a window of getting it done, and you know what, let's just pad the bill because they're stuck with us because if they don't use us, they're not going to hit the DEP deadline and they're going to be screwed. And I just don't understand through all that time why someone wasn't called in that knew what they were doing, and whoever was making decisions at one point just said, you know what, this is beyond my scope, I need to get someone here that knows what they're doing. And our people.
Just to clarify, so how much does it cost, how much on the town side did we say that we would help with this? With Lillis?
105,000.
And how much does the Board of Ed have to put in?
0. Right
On this particular one?
Yeah, they're asking for another 75,000, they're asking for 75,000.
So
79.
we, the town council, voted $105,000 to help the Board of Ed remove the tank. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
Yes.
Collaboration.
And now they're asking us for an additional $78,000. Is that, am I hearing that right?
Correct.
If the contingency turns out to be necessary, sir.
Okay, what is it right now? 56,000?
It would be
59?
59.
59. And I would certainly suggest that as I said on the handout you had, change order number 3 for in the amount of 18.5 be backed out. Because that's not there. That
Well, I
doesn't
can
exist.
tell you as a business owner, if I make a mistake, I have to take responsibility for it. So I agree with Paul. You know, the Board of Ed is gonna have to step up to the plate.
It's not even the Board of Ed's money, it's the taxpayers' money. Regardless of whose money is coming out, the taxpayers have to fund it.
But doing the hindsight 2020, it's not gonna get us any further. I think we should just move on.
Can I ask Dave a question? Dave, is it possible that your contractor could be asked to go through
Thank you.
and
I think that would be in order.
maybe this
Maybe you
turn
can
of
come here.
events might
I would.
help him
I would,
sharpen his pencil?
I think that if we got the questions and
Who's
very.
the contractor?
ETT.
I think they should come here.
Yeah, I
ETT?
agree.
I'm
I think they should come here and explain to the town council why they are fleecing us. And quite frankly, I've seen this for a decade that I've been sitting at this table. Contractors have a tendency of, not only our town, they do it to almost every town that I read a newspaper article on. They hold us hostage here. I'm sorry, we pay an exorbitant amount of money to use the contractors that are either state-approved or mandated by the state. I'm sorry. This number, I couldn't agree with Councilman Szymanski more. I'm in the heavy construction business. I think that jackhammer rental absolutely made my head explode when I saw it.
Have you
7,500-pound hammer, like
Have
Paul
they
said,
worked
in
for
a
you
day, day and a
before?
half, would have this whole empty of any rock that was in there.
I think you've
I think it's
raised some good
absurd.
questions,
Excuse me.
and, excuse me.
I don't want to make it
Wendy,
worse.
going
I
back
just
there.
want to I really, but I'm here to answer questions.
No,
And
the question was if we
I
used them
believe we
before.
have used ETT, and the town is also collaborating with ETT. So you might want to be aware of that on the other tanks. Is that fair to say? So that is my understanding.
Mr. Bassett, we had overages on the tanks that we've overseen.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Okay. And but I did want to be clear on that.
On the projects, maybe.
With regards to the process, you're absolutely correct, Councilman Szymanski. We ran into this at Hill and Plain. The board did pay an overage from those expenditures. And it was my knowledge that based on the where we are this evening to bring this to light to the council for these change orders based on the conversations that I was privy to with you, Mayor Bass. So that's where we are. I think the board is more than understanding of these questions, of trying to delve into these costs because they are all taxpayer dollars. It's not the board's money, it's not the town's money, it's everybody's money. And I think that's fair. But in the spirit of candidness, these particular tanks, and I am not in the construction business, there have been some surprises along the way. Can they equate to these dollars? I'm not in the field. But this has not been an easy process. And I think that we're trying to get this rectified, but we are here this evening to bring this forward, and that's what we did. We brought these costs to you to see and go through. So we're happy to go back and re-examine, but that's where we're at.
Thank you, Wendy. Walter?
Instead of continuously whipping this horse, Paul's got valid points, Tom's got valid points. Katie, let's bring in the contractor and have the contractor speak to us
That's fair.
and move on from there.
And please provide us with the copies of the tickets that have already been signed off on and the material removed to date.
Please.
I mean,
You've raised some good questions. We'll go back, I was gonna say we'll go back and dig into it.
That'll work for
I
me.
didn't say that. And we'll arrange through the mayor's office when the contractor can be here to answer questions.
And if
Thank you,
there,
Dr.
if there are
Tracy.
any special questions from any of you, I guess.
Yeah, I'd like to immediately have those tickets so then we can
Yeah,
formulate
put
a
them through the
specific
mayor's
set of
office,
questions.
and we'll do our very best in a timely fashion.
Thank you.
One last question. So out of the $105,108, what have we spent, have we given this contractor $97,713?
yes.
That's been paid.
Interesting.
Well,
Okay. That tells me a lot. Thank you.
Thanks.
Please have him come and talk
Okay,
to
now
us.
we're, Walter?
I just wanted to say thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Now we're
Not
on
your
B.
fault.
Shall I stay up the plate
Yes,
here?
sir.
Yes.
We warned you.
Yep.
Sorry.
Can I just make a correction here? You asked for, Mr. Zemanski.
They said that the only material removed, you can correct me if I'm wrong, were the boulders.
Right.
So I want the tickets, which is each truck's volume of material that was removed, how many yards per ticket. I want to see the actual tickets, and I want to see that we signed off on each truck leaving the site. That's, I mean, we got Dave Chaplinski here, he's more a project manager on the roads, he could tell you, when he's doing the road project in one long road. Yeah, yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we'll do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we're on to USA Communities process for roof replacement.
Yes, so
Thank
Dr.
you.
Tracy?
This one, having learned our lesson on a previous project, we're coming to you ahead of time. As you know, we face a couple of serious roof projects. We've been working on the one at the high school, and then we have the Sarah Noble School, which prior to the May storm actually was the board's top priority leaking roof to deal with. And we used a process, I say we, prior to my time here, we used a process called the U.S. Communities purchasing process, together with the Garland Company, to do the roof at Scotticoke School, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago. And I understand from my board colleagues that that went fairly well. So we're interested in using that same process at Sarah Noble, but I know that there were some questions about that process as it pertained to soliciting bids at the high school. So I'm coming to you tonight to see, I gather the mayor's talked with the town attorney, and we wanted to make a formal request to use that process to expedite the specking and bidding process. But we wanted to come here first, rather than go through the process and then take questions afterwards.
Councilwoman
So
Francis?
you've got some background information, and Kevin and I'd be happy to answer questions about that. And
Okay.
if you approve, that's the direction we'd like to go. If you don't, we'll have to go some other way.
So here's a question, and this would apply to what we just discussed and other things. In your contracting, do you ever ask for a not-to-exceed price?
I don't know that we've done that.
Do you ever ask for guarantees of work, and how long do you ask for that guarantee to be based upon the work? I'm not asking you to define each one,
Yeah.
but a not-to-exceed contract is a very common thing for many, many reasons. Obviously, it protects both parties, but I haven't seen that, and I'm curious to know if you have a reason for not doing that.
For the high school, I believe we were asked for hard numbers, so we actually went through the full bid process at that time.
But not to exceed needs to be in the contract. Those are words that have to be in.
Correct.
That's the way it goes.
But we haven't signed any contracts.
No, we have not.
We haven't signed any
That
contracts.
would be
But
the
in
method.
everything you do, I mean, even in the removal and replacement of oil tanks and fixing shingles that come off the high school roof, you know, when somebody guarantees your roof for 30 years, they usually give you a piece of paper to tell you that they're signing the bottom line as you sign your check. And so we're spending a lot of money in collaboration with the town and the Board of Ed, but it's all the taxpayers' money, doesn't matter what you want to term it. So if I'm a taxpayer, and I'm asking why we don't do that. Because a contractor worth their salt is able to give you one. That's the real reason for change orders. The real reason that somebody will come to you before it's a tragic situation and you are now stuck and have to spend more money, is you go for not to exceed. And that tells them right off the bat that you mean to pay attention. So I'm looking at this scope of work, which says, any needed repairs are gonna be repriced at $285 per visit. Okay, how many repairs is that? Any number? 5, 10, 100? 2 roofers at 4 hours minimum, make all necessary repairs, photos will be done and sent to you at $1,311 per visit. Okay, so how many visits? It's easy if it's only 1 or 2, but if it turns out to be 25, then we're talking a whole nother scope here. So I'm just putting it out.
This has nothing to do with
That's
replacing the
what I'm
roof. I don't
No,
even
I
know
know
why we
that.
have this.
Pardon?
The
No,
agenda
I'm talking
items-
about, I'm saying this is a good example, that there's never a not to exceed. We never ask anybody, saying you want a hard number isn't the same. And I think that even if this was gonna be done, this is just a repair, correct?
Right,
This
we
was-
experienced leakage.
This was the
at-
backup for asking for the roof replacement.
Oh, I don't know why we have it then.
So why do we have this?
Yeah,
I can't see.
No, I
the-
know. This is a site visit to check the roof repairs and 2 roofers for a 4-hour minimum. This has nothing to do with the agenda item.
for the high school.
I know the document you're talking about, I
Right.
don't know why you have
So
it.
do we have okay. Go ahead, Katie, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Our request tonight was simply to get direction from the council as to whether the U.S. Communities process was legitimate. I gather that the town attorney thinks it is, but we wanted to check with you.
Yep.
Because we feel it would expedite the process.
Right.
Can I speak?
Yep.
So, based on the overrun on Hill and Plain, based on the overrun at East Street School, based on the fact that your minutes of the December 11th facilities meeting, you're throwing the high school roof over to us, it appears. Perhaps the town should take over this process. Because just being brutally honest, I don't have a lot of faith in the facilities department to oversee the roof replacements.
Just on the high school roof, we are not throwing it over to you.
That's what the minutes said, Mr. Lawson said at the meeting.
Well, there
He
was
said
a-
at this point, go ahead, sorry, I
Excuse
didn't
me.
mean to interrupt you, I apologize.
There was a request for another option to be spec'd and bid out. That was beyond the scope of the work that we had done, and we thought, since the town was interested in seeing that option, that the town would develop it, so that you would have confidence in whatever that number comes back at. Then we had requested that that option, along with the others that Garland had developed, be back to the Board of Education, so the board could give you its recommendation. Understanding you spend the money, and so you get to decide ultimately what the fix at the high school will be. But we thought it would be useful for the Board of Ed to see the full spectrum of options, including the one that was requested most recently. And then the board will give you its opinion, and you'll do what you think is right.
And when was that feedback given to the mayor?
Regarding,
The fact that you want us to do the analysis of reshingling the roof?
I'd have a
Our
couple of weeks
last
ago.
meeting, Yeah,
Okay.
so I've asked Valerie to look at that.
Yeah, so it says, Mr. Dahl asked if the board was interested in another joint meeting. Mr. Lawson asked what the goal would be. Mrs. Chastain said to be clear that the ball was now in the town's court regarding this project. This is December 11th. Mr. Lawson said he did not think a joint meeting would move that goal along. That's what your minutes say from the facilities meeting.
My conversation with the mayor was not to put the whole project on your shoulders, but simply to take this last request for a shingle over shingle approach. And since we don't have the capability, we'd have to go out and get an architect or get somebody to
So
figure
as
that
part
out.
of yours, if I remember right, the standing seam metal roof was just to go over the shingles with no insulation. The asphalt shingles was to have rigid insulation with air pocket. Any energy modeling to see what the energy savings would be in each of those alternatives to see the price differential or?
No.
Okay. And is that something that we just don't believe is important as part of the, I mean, Tom, you're more of an expert on this. So.
Well, I was going to say, later on this evening, we're going to be talking to the folks from Celtic about doing an overall energy plan for the town. And a significant improvement you can do to any building, and I mentioned this years ago when we did the roof at I think it was Silver Meadow, is adding as much rigid insulation to the roof as possible. May drive the cost up incrementally, but the savings on energy is dramatic. And that savings, by adding that additional insulation, can pay for a lot of these projects, or a portion of these projects, over a period of time with the savings. So, I mean, one of the first people I would look at would be Celtic to run those numbers on a true, truly scoped out roof that has got as much rigid insulation as can be put on it to retain the heat in the wintertime and deflect the heat in the summertime. So, I mean, we're gonna have an expert that's gonna be coming up at the end of this. I think, you know, as a town-wide, I mean, these facilities are owned by the entire town. Not by the Board of Ed, not by the town council, but by the entire town. And I really think we're getting into an expertise situation here where we need to have either a buildings committee or a building oversight committee to look at all of these projects in totality and figure out how does it benefit the town in the long run.
And I'm open to that. We've had several meetings, and I'm open to, if there are more ideas here that we should consider, we ought to do that. That's with respect to the high school project. Our request tonight was about process related to the Sarah Noble process.
Exactly.
So just to be clear, my opinion is that the process with respect to the high school roof was extremely blindered. And I think we need to look at every single option with respect to this. So maybe if Celtic Energy's here tonight, there's a discussion had with them. So we look at every single option. The person, just so you're clear, the person who oversaw your bidding process only gave you 2 options out of a multitude of options that could exist. So I think we owe it to the taxpayers as part of that also, is to see what the potential energy savings are for each option, because as Tom said, you know, you may spend slightly more on something, but the savings more than make up for it. So I think when we're spending between these 2 roofs over $4 or $5, $6 million, we owe it to the taxpayer to make sure we're building the most cost efficient, best performing roof system.
Absolutely.
For the value.
And what are we building, are those roofs able to handle a potential solar project? Which I've been in favor of. You know, our schools have nothing but open sky above them. You know, a very common practice that is going on through what Connecticut has called the CPACE program, which is where businesses can go out, building owners can go out and add these energy conservation measures, use the savings there to pay the bond or the note to fund those projects.
One of the options that was developed was exactly that, sir. That's one of the options.
Right, and that's what I'm hoping, but I mean, you know, when I heard and I didn't read the spec, but to have an interstitial space in between the roof and then a space and then rigid, to me is the wrong spec. That spec should be flat on the roof, and it should be a continuous R40 or to R50 on those roofs, which originally, even though I think at Sarah Noble, we only went to R21, which I always thought was a mistake. But I think the more you can really get that spec correct, it will pay us back in the long haul.
A couple of things that I might, by the way, even though I don't live here anymore, I'm still a taxpayer, a small taxpayer. So I share your interest in making sure we get good bang for the buck. And if there are things we can do going forward on any of these projects, to sit with you, gather your expertise and refine and improve, we ought to do that. We all have an interest in that. In fairness to our process here, we did have a couple of sessions around this table, including folks from the town, and I'm talking now about the high school project, where we tried to agree on the options that would be spec'd and bid, and of course you need to narrow it to some extent, otherwise you're asking for 100 different projects. So at that time, several options were identified, ranging from an asphalt approach that did have I call it the ventilation allowance underneath, to a standing seam roof, that had a solar option, all the way up to including the solar. And I think that was about $1 million additional cost with a 10-year payback. So those were the options that we had spec'd and bid. After that process was finished, the question was raised, what about an asphalt over asphalt approach, which you can do one time. By code, you can't do it 3 times. I don't know why I'm telling you. And that option, I said to the mayor, I don't have the capability to develop the specs and the bid for that. Would the town be willing to do that? Add that to the menu, all the way up to solar, give the school board a chance to have an opinion, and then we count on you guys to make the best decision for the town. That's where it stood.
So the goal is getting the asphalt or the shingle to shingle costs. That's where we're at with that, because they have the other 2 already.
And
For
all
the high
of that, by the way, is on another topic from tonight,
Correct.
which is the high school. Our request tonight is with respect to Sarah Noble, and would this council approve the use of the U.S. Communities process, which was the same process that was used, I'm told, to good result at Scotticoke some years ago. If the answer is yes, then that would be my intention. If the answer is no, we'll have to find another way to spec and bid that work. That's why we're here.
So, just, I guess my concern is we go in this same loop that we're going in the high school right now, where it was in your hands. There were only couple options considered, 2 roofing options considered with the addition of the solar, I guess that's a third. So my concern is from a timing perspective, you guys come back to us with 2 options. The same thing happens again where we say, hey, why don't you consider this or this? So we're losing time. So I'd like to table this, talk to Celtic Energy, maybe talk to some other consultants that are willing to look at not 100 options, but 4 or 5 options that include energy modeling, just to see what the best taxpayer value is.
If that's your pleasure.
Yeah.
That's
I think an energy model is essential.
You're referring to Sarah Noble?
Yeah.
Yes. Can I just?
Sure, Wendy.
If I may, just a clarification, because I think the conversation was on the topic of the high school tab, and I just, for procedural purposes. One of the reasons at least I thought that this was on the agenda this evening is because we were trying to gather some information and direction prior to getting the town numbers together for possible bonding. We know that it's outside of the scope of an operational budget for the Board of Education. I think it would be safe to say that the entire Board of Education would be very collaborative in getting any numbers that we all can get together, as long as we make sure that we're not falling in this loop, that there is a clear direction, and that we get this information prior to a bonding package going out, so we're not sitting here another year from now trying to address this issue, why this happened, what we're doing, and where we're going. So that is my understanding why this was put on the agenda this evening, because you had requested us to do so. Am I missing that?
When we all sat down and talked
Yes.
together, one of the needs we're trying to get and assess our capital requirements,
Absolutely.
because we're gonna have to go to bond authorization, which will be in the late spring. So we're trying to assess
Absolutely.
what our needs are, what our costs are.
Whether this motion is acted upon or tabled tonight, however we proceed, I think we should have a meeting similar to the one that we had with
Absolutely.
regard to the high school roof. Invite anybody that's got an idea to come in and say, what are the options that we ought to spec and bid out, so we can see as full a menu as we all want. My understanding is that the Sarah Noble roof, there probably will be fewer options. It's not amenable to solar, I'm told. We're not looking at a full remove and replace the roof, which would be very expensive. It's basically repair the roof in place. But still, even if the list of options is pretty short, we ought to sit here like we did on the high school roof, go around and make sure we've got everybody's idea before somebody goes out and does the bidding work. So we're open to that, no matter how you decide to proceed.
And then as part of that, could you just forward us the USA Communities process, because we don't have that?
Sure.
Thanks.
I did, and I know this was kind of last minute, but through the mayor, you have
Do we have that? Which
a
is-
communication from me that has a website on it,
Oh, cool.
but we'll go back and.
No, that's okay, we got it then. Thanks.
If that doesn't
That was
suffice,
in the oil tank
that was
stuff?
Yeah.
part 2 of the
It's
oil
part
tank.
2.
Okay, cool.
And if, Paul, if that's not sufficient,
I got
just
you.
let me
Email.
know. Let me know if you need more.
Thanks for your
Oh,
time.
I
But
see.
I believe that some of that was also captured in the 2015 minutes when we did discuss the Sarah Noble, the Scatco group, I beg your pardon, going back to September and August of 2015. The town council minutes reflect some of this conversation. So that might be helpful. But I think that by putting this just on the forefront of having this open dialogue, we know we have a time frame of bonding. We know that there's a responsibility, and we, meaning all of us as a town, want to make sure that we get as much data as we can together to bring forward this possible large financial investment in the most cost-effective and, professional manner. And so we're on board with that. When we last left this meeting, after several meetings, we were asked to make sure that we could go back and check the USA Communities process, and we did that, and that's why we're here this evening, just procedurally on that piece. So hopefully, because of the time frame also, we need to get the conversation going to get some of these numbers together, to make sure that we fit within the timeline that I believe your finance director mentioned to us at that said meeting.
Lee intends to do these in the summer.
Exactly, but it's going to take weeks to compile, we still have to get everyone's thought process, and we want to make sure we're ready.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy.
Okay, item 9, update from Finance Department, Finance Director Greg Oskar.
So Dr. Tracy, I'll have I'll call you tomorrow and we'll set up another meeting. We'll have everybody together so we can get this expedited. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. The audit is complete and a draft audit has been submitted for review. The results are favorable and the town realized a modest surplus. This is particularly satisfying as we were able to mitigate a $2.5 million deficit resulting from reduced state revenues. I have yet to see a draft of the single audit. However, I'm informed by the auditors that there were no material weaknesses or deficiencies cited in the 2018 audit. The audit presentation will be held Wednesday, February 13th in this room at 7 o'clock.
Bliss?
On January 15th, the town rolled $7.36 million in bonds to mature in 6 months. The winning bidder was TD Securities with a net interest cost of 1.91%. The federal funds rate on that date was 2.52%. So we beat that rate by 61 basis points. Our financial advisor indicated this was among the lowest interest rates he's experienced in the last 6 months, despite a climate of rising short-term interest rates. So we hit a home run. The mayor and I are reviewing departmental budget requests. We are currently meeting to produce the mayor's recommended budget. On Friday, I met with our Webster Bank and I instructed her to initiate the process for implementing positive pay on the town's payroll account. We don't currently have that. There have been some instances in recent memories that we caught through the bank reconciliation process with now someone gets the bright idea of depositing their check electronically and then finds the check somewhere down there. Oh, look what I got. Cashes it again. We've got these, we pursued it, we get the money back, but the positive pay will eliminate this. Additionally, I upgraded our OPEB investment to a secured municipal account, which will yield the town an additional 59 basis points on those funds. Now to discuss the expenditure, the year-to-date budget as of December 31st. Expenditures are at 51.5% of budget. That number includes approximately $2 million in encumbrances. On a straight line basis, you would expect to be at 50% of budget. As mentioned previously, the front loading of some expenditures account for some of that variance. Several accounts that merit watching are police overtime, dispatchers overtime, and the tree removal accounts as they are exceeding the 6-month budget benchmark. The Board of Ed budget is at 44% of budget, not including encumbrances. Overall, cash expended for both town and Board of Ed without encumbrances is $49,589,443. On the revenue side, overall, the revenues are at 56.3% of budget. Tax collections are at 63.3% of budget. Building permits, youth and max revenue, and parks revenue are all behind the expected budget targets at this time, but are seasonal and expected to adjust accordingly, perhaps with the exception of the youth agency. Revenues collected to date amount to $57,441,974. This amounts to an overall positive cash flow for the town of $10,852,531. questions.
Yeah,
Mike?
just for my own clarification, you said that on the town side, we've spent up to 51% of our budget as of December 31st?
Yes.
But that's 5 months, right?
No, 6.
So don't we start July 1st, or am I not right about that?
July, August, September, October, November, December.
Oh,
6 months.
my
Six.
mistake.
That's 6.
I counted wrong, just checking.
Good test, Mike.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yes, it's on.
You
Need an
passed.
extra,
You
Any
passed
other-
your test.
Any other questions
needs
for
an
Greg?
extra finger.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you,
Greg.
Tammy?
Yeah. I need an extra finger.
Yes, you do.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Tammy Reardon, your Grants and Compliance Specialist. I compiled a report for you that pretty much makes up a year of activity in the Grants and Compliance Office. So as you can see from that, I've broken down some numbers on a small table there, letting you know what I've identified, which was over $8.8 million worth of funding opportunities for the town of New Milford. During the course of the past year, I've submitted more than $5.1 million worth of grant applications for the town of New Milford. Of that, we were awarded $636,000 plus some extra. I still have $1.4 million in change in outstanding applications. So those are pending applications that are currently under review. Some of the breakdown includes some partial funding requests. So for instance, the recreational trails grant was a partial funding request. So I just wanted to put those numbers in there so that you don't have a discrepancy. And the big number of what we were declined was $2.6 million in grants. A couple of notable things from those applications that make up that difference is $2.1 million was a single application, as you guys know about. I spoke to you earlier in the year, in 2018, for the Volkswagen diesel emission reduction program. That would have allowed us to replace 18 of our plow trucks. Unfortunately, we were not awarded that grant, but no municipality in the state was awarded that grant. The fund had $12.2 million available, and Connecticut DOT and Yukon took more than 50% of those funds awarded. We have been asked to apply for the next round when that becomes available. I do not expect that next grant round to become available until at least the end of 2019, potentially early 2020, as they will be finishing up the current round and the funding projects that go with that. If you turn over to the second side there, Connecticut Recreational Trails Program, that was one example of a partial award that we received. I put together a grant application for phases 1 through 3 for the New Milford River Trail, and that grant application totaled $574,000. DEEP had a lot of applications come in. They didn't ask for letters of intent, so they didn't know how many applications or what the value of the applications were. So they had more applications exceeding the value of what they had for funding. So through communication with DEEP, I was able to secure New Milford a partial award. That partial award of $180,500 will allow us to design and put together the construction specifications for phase 1 of that trail. So running from Boardman Road south along the river to approximately the entrance of Medenstill. We have not received the grant award document on that, so I'm eagerly awaiting that so that we can find out the details that we need to adhere to. Also, as you know, the $20,000 was awarded to New Milford from the State Historic Preservation Office for the adaptive reuse study of East Street School. That project is moving along. We should be choosing a vendor shortly. And once that vendor is chosen, please keep an eye out for the public input meetings that they will be hosting regarding that property. Another piece, as I was considering what has happened over the past year since I've been your grant and compliance officer, is the actual compliance piece of that. And taking a look at that, the compliance piece is really important for us to not only receive the positive reviews that we received from Mahoney Sable. I worked directly with them. They were very pleased to have an individual single contact for all of the grant project questions that they had. I responded immediately to them, providing them with whatever documentation they requested. I had already had put together so that we were able to respond efficiently and effectively to them. That was very helpful. But in addition to that, I have reporting, both administrative reporting and quarterly reporting, and some of that reporting is on grant projects that were already in the works prior to my start date. And when I totaled that up, that was over $5.7 million worth of grant money that have current projects, some of which are coming to a close, but I've had to maintain the reporting on those, stay up with them to make sure we stay in compliance with those funding agencies. Looking ahead into 2019, again, we've got that $8.8 million from the front. I'm continuously working on a rolling calendar, so some opportunities that we may not have been prepared for last year, we may be prepared for this year through applications. But I do know from speaking with the mayor that we're working together on a CDBG application, so a Small Cities Community Development Block Grant. The mayor would like to look at the possibility of bringing back a housing rehabilitation program into New Milford. New Milford had one in the mid-90s, and what that does is that enables homeowners to make necessary repairs to their homes that they wouldn't necessarily be able to afford with a second mortgage or a home equity loan or line of credit of sorts. What this would do through the grant program is the grants are funded out to low and moderate income families that would like to make these renovations or need to do these repairs, and then the town is listed as a lien holder, and we get paid only when the sale of that property or the transfer of that property happens. So not much risk for the town at all, but provides much opportunity for some of our low and moderate income families that are here in New Milford that need to, get back and catch up on things since the past 10 years from the economic downturn. Another application is actually already in, but the State Historic Preservation Office will be reviewing it in the coming months, and that was the application for $100,000 to replace the roof here on Town Hall. So that is something the State Historic Preservation Office asked us to apply for. When they came in, they were visiting, they saw the building, they were extremely impressed at both the age and the level of maintenance taken on with this building. We began discussions about what the building itself needed for long-term care, and the roof came up. They asked us to apply. So that application is being looked at favorably at this time. I should know within the next couple of months how that goes. I continue to work with our town departments, looking forward at projects they need to do, looking at needs that you ask them to address. I will say that the three largest departments for funding availability as well as open communication with myself are the police department, the senior center, and our public works department. That tends to be where most of the money and availability is for us as a municipality, and I will say those departments have been very receptive and very helpful in allowing me to work with them to get these grants for you.
Any questions for Tam?
Great.
Nice report, thanks.
Paul?
So what was the 3.65 million in grants that were identified but not submitted?
Those will range from projects, grants that perhaps we weren't prepared for project-wise. Let me take a look here. So for example, and these are things that I've carried forward. Let's see, look for some big ones here. So last year we did not go out for a small cities grant application at all. So that right there was $500,000 that would have been encompassed in that. The community.
What could that be? Like what kind of work, what kind of activities could that go on?
The small cities grants or CBD grants we've used in the past here in New Milford, we've used for infrastructure. So a lot of the sidewalk repair and replacement, Church Street, Whittlesey Avenue, even the Railroad Street sidewalk project about, what was that, probably 16 years ago, that was those sort of funds. The program now is managed by the Department of Housing as opposed to the Department of Economic Development. When it was in the Department of Economic Development, their focus was just that, economic development, including streetscapes. So we took advantage of it at that time. A few years ago, they moved the program into the Department of Housing. And now that program is very much geared towards low and moderate income housing of sorts. So that's one example. Another example would be, we had the Department of Justice, there was a COP school violence prevention program that I had identified. It was worth about $500,000, and that was a very quick turn time, and it occurred right around the same time that former Chief Boyne was leaving the town. So I didn't have the right contact and association, but I'm establishing a great relationship with Chief Ceruto to work forward on that potentially for this year. There's also another one there for the Department of Justice. We'll become very close friends. Community-oriented policing services, right up your alley, Chief. That's another $500,000 that would encompass some of that 3.5 that you're asking about.
Could we get a list of all these so we see how the breakdown is? That would be cool.
A list of
all the breakdown of them, just so we can work on making sure that we plan for next year. So of all the grants identified, awarded, pending, just there must be a breakdown of how we got to these numbers. That would be helpful, I think, to the council.
Sure.
And then of the 636,683 awarded, how much of that is new money and not part of the grants that we typically get?
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, take your time.
No. If I go from 1 year to the next, so if it wasn't utilized the previous year, I will count it as new, just because some things we may have had 3 years ago, but then they lapsed. So if I go from 1 year to the next, the majority of that is new funding.
Okay, thanks. You'll get us that breakdown.
Sure.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions for Tammy? Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Tammy, very much.
Next is River Revitalization and Bar Grant Steering Committee. Mayor Furman.
Good evening, Town Council members. For the record, my name is Lisa Furman, Chairperson of the Bar Grant Steering Committee, which is working with the state grant of $170,000 that we received earlier this year, or last year, sorry, the new year, in June 2018. The contract was signed with the state, I think either at the end of August or the beginning of September. The committee consists of myself, Julie Bailey, who's here this evening, and Lucy Waldrick, who's here also this evening, Christopher Gardner, and Richard Rosiello. In the interview process and screening process for a consultant for our master plan for this area, we also had the input of Mayor Pete Bass, our Community Investment Officer Kathy Castagnetta, and two members of our Riverfront Advisory Committee who are very well versed in development and marketing. One is Jean Solomon and the other is Marjorie Feldberg. Oh, and Frank Wargo, I'm sorry, I did leave out one member from the Economic Development Commission and Corporation on the committee. So it was a committee that really has a wide range of knowledge, experience, and expertise. We had 11 people who submitted, and in the report that we gave you, they're all listed under Exhibit 1. Their prices ranged from a cost of $237,000 down to the low of $168,000. with most of them hovering around the $170,000 mark, which is coincidentally the same number as the grant that we received. The committee had sent out an RFP in September of 2018. Originally, prior to the Bar Grant Steering Committee, the Riverfront Revitalization Committee had sent out an RFQ to find, to look for consultants and find out qualifications. However, upon reading the rules of the DEEP, as far as DECD, as far as the consultants, we had to do it through the Bar Steering Committee, so we began the process anew. So that's what took us so long to get to this night. We reviewed the 11 proposals. We narrowed it down to 4 people that we chose to interview. Those people were Agency Landscape and Design, Maloney McBroom, NV5, and WXY, listed in alphabetical order. There were discernible differences between those 4 and the rest of the group, which helped us with our evaluation in choosing these people. We conducted interviews on December 3rd and 4th, and again, all of the members I mentioned were in attendance. Consultants were encouraged to bring key members of their team to the interview, and in order to be able to have face-to-face with them dialogue, we limited them to an 8-slide PowerPoint presentation, which also gave us a chance to learn about their presentation and interaction skills. Interviews were approximately 75 minutes in duration, and we met again on December 18th, decided to check references, which Liba, Lucy, Kathy, and Jean made those calls. And we spoke with people through Monday, January 7th through Monday, January 14th. At our meeting of January 22nd, the Bar Area Revitalization Committee voted to recommend to the Town Council that the award be given to WXY. And I'll read a little bit from the report, but I think you've all had a chance to read it, so I don't have to go through the whole thing. But their proposal, number 1, was on budget, and they met our timetable. And their proposal was consistent with the objectives of the RFP. It contains robust and inclusive community engagement component based on collaboration. We also, in our RFP, asked them to have specific interface with the Town Council at 2 points, actually 3 points during the process, so that the Town Council will be involved and understand and give input all the way through the process. The team has 22 professionals, or professional slots. These people have very deep knowledge and many, many years of experience, and they presented very, very well. You've just felt very, very confident with them. There was a clear understanding among them all. There were 6 people that came on their team for the need of synergies and connections with the downtown village center and the downtown local businesses, and the need not to look at the river stretch as one, but to look at downtown and the river stretch as a whole, because both will complement each other, both will help each other. So WXY is the lead firm, and their focus is on visioning, master plans, brownfield redevelopment, community engagement, land use planning, data analysis, and urban and landscape design. A company called PW Grosser Consulting, which has offices in New York, but also has an office here in Cheshire, Connecticut, and does a lot of work in Connecticut, will lead the brownfield identification, environmental site assessments, a strategy for remediation funding, and environmental strategy for the whole plan. Sam Schwartz Consulting will lead on mobility, transportation improvements, and infrastructure analysis. Sassafras 55 will lead open space strategy, landscape design, and site planning. And Larissa Ortiz Associates and Barretto Bay will collaborate on market and economic analysis. They will interface with the marketing consultant, who we will be coming back next month with a recommendation to this town council for. And so the timing will work that the market analysis and the master plan will coincide together just at the right time for one to inform the other. It's a very impressive group, as I said. Many of the projects they've been involved in are larger than ours. Many of them are in New York. They have brownfield revitalization, they have waterfront district planning, they deal with connectivity, livability, sustainability, community involvement, and financial and feasible analysis. When we interviewed them, they were excited. They showed a very clear understanding of the project. They had, again, tremendous public engagement skills. They were cohesive, enthusiastic, and collaborative. And most importantly, they were visionary and creative. The principal in charge actually went to summer camp here at Bucks Rock Camp years and years ago and still has family that lives in the area, so he's very aware and very attached to New Milford, and that showed in his speaking. Some of the plans that they are or have worked on are in Tarrytown. They're doing a comprehensive plan and station area zoning along the riverfront area there. They've done Annabelle Basin, which is owned by a private developer called Plaxall Inc. And if that doesn't ring a bell to you, maybe the new headquarters of Amazon rings a bell to you. So that's one of their projects. They did the East River Blueway Plan, the North Brooklyn Brownfield Opportunity Plan, Mamaroneck Bike Route Planning and Design, in Bridgeport, the East End Market Study, and many, many others. The Queensway Plan they did for the Trust for Public Land, so they work with developers, they work with towns, cities, boroughs, and also they did a project, Community Design for Affordable Homes and Sustainable Places, with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and Westchester County. So we think that they really bring a depth and a breadth and a new way to look at things, and I think they will be very, very, very exciting. And I'm willing to take any questions, or I do have their plan here if anybody wants to look at it and pass it around. They do talk extensively under desired incomes about enhancing the downtown, linking the riverfront. The riverfront master plan will include projects the town can undertake in short and long term to connect the existing town with the newly reimagined waterfront corridor. So over and over, they understand that we have to revitalize downtown and the riverfront together. And that is the first goal that we had when we gave our presentation earlier. So we're here tonight to ask the town council to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract with WXY for this project. The price is $170,000, and the timeline would be from as soon as we get the contract signed and agreed to, till early December, with a lot of the public input and the draft plans coming out September, October. So that would, kind of be the timeline on this.
Katie?
Thank you, Leva and company. Good job, as always.
Thank you.
So the time frame of, if they were to go ahead with this, how much time do they envision it would take them to arrive at the end of their work?
Well, as I just said, probably in December, at the very beginning of December, they will propose the final plan.
But when would they start?
When would they start? Probably within a week of getting the contract.
Okay.
They're prepared and ready.
Now, so the public input, so we don't want fatigue here in town, how's that gonna mesh with the public input for POCD and public input for Briken River Trail and any others?
Katie, it's been something I've talked to the mayor about for a year already, about how we coordinate all of these things together. And I think once we get the consultant on board, we'll have him speak with Kathy Castaneda, who's, we're in the chairpeople of the POCD, because maybe we can coordinate some of these things to work together. So we're not duplicating things or bringing people, asking them to come out 17 times in 1 month for different things. So there are certain topics that we can cover. In March, they plan to have an open house, probably towards the end of March. Then they will have a public session in June, in September. They plan to come here in October, here being the town council. And then after your feedback and input, to go back and rework it, and then come back in December with a final plan that hopefully you will approve.
And another, just one more question. Will the people that you met with, that were very exuberant and all excited about this, will they be the people that are doing
They are
the
the
actual
team.
work?
They are the team.
That's the team?
They are the team.
Okay, good. And my last question, the $170,000 grant,
Correct.
there's no match required?
The match was the marketing study that the
That
town
we
was
already-
going to do.
We already did.
No, we haven't done anything yet.
No, but I mean, we already talked about that money, didn't we?
Correct.
Right,
Yeah.
that, there's money in the budget currently
Yeah, that's
for
right.
that, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion?
Yes, move to, move to empower the mayor to enter into an agreement with the bar, what's their name? Yeah, right, with
XY.
Yeah, I don't have it on here. WXY to authorize you to sign and enter into contract with them as a recommended consultant for the Riverfront Revitalization Master Plan.
Any discussion on the motion?
Second.
Do I have a second? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Yay,
Mayor.
thank you.
Thank you, a lot of work.
Thank you very much.
You want to make the recommendation, do it? Hey, John, real quick, we have Councilman Gold would like to move up Denise from the chamber, real quick for just,
It's a 3-second.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here when you're considering closing rooms.
can you just make a motion to suspend
Yes,
the
I make
rules?
a motion to suspend the rules and move item number 13 up
To item 11.
to item 11.
Any other discussion on the, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Denise?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. So I believe you have the request in the agenda for the road closures for 2019 of events that the chamber organizes. Those include the Milford fireworks celebration, Village Fair Days, and the tree lighting ceremony. The only correction in the agenda from the letter that I sent to the mayor and to town council is Bank Street, and the agenda says closed 6 a.m. Friday, July 27th through 11 p.m. Saturday, July 27th. We're just looking, asking it to be closed 6 a.m. through 11 p.m. on Saturday only.
Oh, so the Friday
Would not be.
removed?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Are these new events? No?
No, these are not new events for the town.
And they've all been signed by the traffic authority and the police chief. Prior to, you guys all have copies
Correct.
of these.
And the fireworks are all taken?
Yep.
Yes, and approval has been granted from Park and Rec to use the green.
Okay. So
Any discussion?
Can we vote on all
we
three
didn't-
together?
We didn't have a motion yet. That's on the, right. So I'd like to move that we accept the road closure request for the 2019 calendar year from the chamber as noted in item 11, which includes item A, B, and C covering 3 events.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in
Item
favor?
13.
What's
So
that?
just moved it up, Mike, to item 11.
Yep.
Right.
I know these taxis.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Denise.
Thanks, Denise. So now we're.
John and John.
Back.
Want to take 2 minutes?
Want to take 2 minutes?
Can we?
Yeah, we'll take 2 minutes while we're setting up. Yep, while we're setting up.
So he's really.
If I could have everybody's attention. So Mr. Whitman and Mr. Oakes are on our Municipal Roads Committee, and they're here to present kind of a review of our roads plan. Mr. Whitman, thank you, sir.
Mayor Bass, members of the council, Greg and Matt, well, a minute ago, and members of the public. First of all, I am John Whitman, chair of the Municipal Roads Committee, and our presenters tonight are John Oakes, our vice chairman, and Mike Sarver, the director of public works, and also one of our esteemed members, Jerry Lakovitz. She's our secretary, so she's one of the officers in the municipal group. So, we've got a presentation for you, and it's really a review of this the Milford roads and the fiscal year 2019 to 2020 plan. And 1 year ago, we showed that the Milford roads badly needed a sustained improvement program. And years of deferred maintenance had eroded overall road quality. And we've done a lot of research into that, and it is a very true statement. StreetScan and the DPW surveyed 182.4 miles of the Milford's paved roads and assigned each a pavement condition index. And the DPW also has an overall condition index that they've been using for many years. The overall PCI for the Milford roads was 69% out of a total of 100%. And New Milford had 53.4 miles of road with a PCI below 55%. 19.9 miles had a PCI of less than 40%, which in normal terms really requires reconstruction of those roads. Improving New Milford's PCI from 68 to 75% would take spending $6.5 million a year for at least 5 years. And that was the basis for the $6.1 million capital funding recommendation that was made for fiscal year 18-19. Here's kind of the breakdown from that previous study. You can see that in the reconstruction category, there were 19.9 miles of road that fell into that, and those are pretty much the full depth reconstruction. And then 33.5 miles that were in rehabilitation, which is basically mill and pave and some of the lesser aggressive types of work. And then up into the preventive, which is the chip seal and the crack seal and what have you. And then up into the roads that we considered in a really good shape, and those that might have been just brand new reconstructed or just very newly reconstructed. And those really were deferred maintenance. Nothing we really need to do on those, just plow the snow in the winter. So lessons learned from the 2017 scan in December, the DPW had StreetScan sample about 25% of New Milford roads. And the plan is to resurvey all New Milford roads over a 4 to 5 year period now that we have the 2017 baseline data. This year, surveyed roads were selected by the DPW, and that sample audit included roads that the DPW had reconstructed in 2017-18, plus roads that had rehabilitation, major and minor preventive, and routine maintenance projects, and some that weren't touched at all. And the idea was that the goal to audit contractor quality and create a database of PCI improvements throughout the year. And it made a lot of sense to look at the quality of the work that was done. How did that stack up to what we would assume it to be at about a 95 to 100% of a total, absolutely brand new road. Yeah. There you go. No, either one prior to that. We haven't done prior to that. Okay, well here's the information, the differences between 2017 and 2018. In 2017, we're at 69.8% of average PCI. And roads that were less than 55%, where we really had to do some heavy work, were at 31.3%. And roads that were, above that were at 68.7%. Look at the progress of 2018. 2018, we're at an average, and that's a weighted average. You can't just take all the percentages on the previous slide and add them together and divide by 5. It's a weighted average based on the number of segments of each road. And there's an algorithm that goes into that, so it's not a simple average. But look at the difference in 2018 at roads that were less than 55, they were at 20.2%, and roads that are greater than 55, we raised it up to 79.8%. So there's progress going on, and that's why we want to look at this as a long-term program to keep this momentum going. I'm going to turn this over to Mike Zarba. Mike, and if you would pick that up from there.
Yeah. Thank you, John. And John.
Well, good evening. I'll get the middle section of the presentation. Mike Zarba, Public Works. So I think following up on what John did, I'm kind of looking at what we progressed on this particular year in terms of construction with the funds that were allocated graciously by the council and the taxpayers for us to make an improvement plan. And we obviously have a plan. We've been working hard with our Municipal Roads Committee, the Mayor's Office, in a collaborative team between our engineering consultants, our own engineering department, and other partners, contractual partners that we use for inspection services to help assist
make sure that we're doing the best that we can with the dollars that we're given. So fiscal year 2018-19, $6.8 million allocated to capital road repairs and maintenance. We've spent or encumbered just over $6.5 million of that, and just over $200,000 is still remaining available to be spent for those projects as we move them to completion. With that money, we paid 7.2 miles of road, 1.8 miles of reconstruction, as you can see by the slide. And in addition to that, although it's not really part of the $6.8 million that was allocated, but we also completed a bridge project on Mill Street over here in southern end of downtown Milford. Kind of a snapshot of what was budgeted for the individual road projects that were done this year. What we spent on those road projects to date, although that's end of December number, not exact current number. What's still available in the accounts, if anything, is there. And then what you see in terms of encumbrances is money to be paid to contractors. It's money already encumbered in purchase orders based on the contracts that we have with the contractors. And highlight for you, Long Mountain Road 3 and Squire Hill, it's important to note that those were awarded as one single project. So those numbers combined equal the value of the project in total. And what we did was allocate the money to each project only for budgetary purposes, really, based on the original engineer's estimate and the percentage split that they felt, I shouldn't say he, that they felt was allocated to one project to the other. So it's not representative of actual dollars spent, just what was budgeted for them as a combined project, but it was split based on a simple straight line percentage number for you. A couple of lessons learned through the process this year. We did start our road projects a little later than we would have liked or had planned to. It had to do with some design work that wasn't due complete until June. We had expected it to be done in May. That put us back on the bid process, and we weren't able to award the bids until late July and get under construction until early September. So one of the pitfalls had to do with timing. We are trying to address that throughout the year here, and I think we'll be talking some more throughout the budget process and how your funding procedure moves forward so that we can eliminate that from being a future problem for us. Well, it did cause some delays in road work for this particular year to roll to what will be the spring of 2019. So we originally anticipated finishing Long Mountain and Squire Hill. Long Mountain is, about 2/3 of it, half to 2/3 of it has its final course on it. The remaining third or half or so will get its final course in May of this year, and then Squire Hill reconstruction will begin in April. We did have, weather problems this year as well, substantial weather problems, frankly, that, you see the slide up there, 17 inches of rain. Mayor, I believe I gave you a slide at some point in time, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was something like 63 days of, delays throughout the construction season this year that, were basically non-working days because of rainfalls. So that did affect our ability to get the schedule complete as we would have hoped. So those are some lessons we learned, and we'll look to continue to correct as we move our program forward. And with that, I think I'm going to turn back over to, not back over to, but I think John Oakes is now going to speak to you a little bit about some of the other things that we found out.
Thanks, Mike. So I get the job of finishing from here to the end of the presentation. We'll try to get through it as quick as we can. I know it's been a long night so far, and there's people behind us even. I feel really sorry for that. So we're starting with lessons learned. The town hadn't really been involved in major road reconstruction in about 10 years. So, and most of the current people in the DPW had no real experience with that. So one of the things, I'm going to sort of go off and talk about some of the things we learned. First was we need more focus on value engineering. That's been a theme tonight, I've noticed. It's certainly been a theme in the road committee's work with the DPW over the course of the year. I think the number one lesson we learned was that we need more than one design engineering company to work projects in the season of design. We need more than one construction company to do that work because you can't get hung up, otherwise you'll fall behind. The smallest problem will set you back. And partly that's what we found last year when we started construction in September for all intents and purposes. Over designing roads, this has been something that the mayor has been hot on, and we all on the road committee and DPW have agreed with him. The design engineering firms, happy to over design the roads, more money in their pockets. So the question is, where can we cut that? Where can we do the strong bulletproof design where it's absolutely necessary and not do it everywhere? And in that way save some money. The other thing we've done, I think a little differently, is we've actively negotiated with bidders. We haven't taken the first thing they've said to us. We've gone back and, as Katie said, in several cases this fall we've asked for not to exceed numbers on design engineering. The other thing is, we've involved, over the last year, we've involved a process of oversight. That process starts with weekly meetings between the road committee, the mayor, and DPW on Mondays. How did we do last week? Where are we ahead? Where are we behind? What have we heard from people in town? And I think that that's been an essential part of the process that we've tried to put in place over the last year. The other big lesson learned is you've got to complete these projects before the snow flies. If you don't complete them before the snow flies, then you've got too many projects next year. And you'll see on a later slide, one of the things we talk about then is we have to have the design engineering money for the next FY this year to spend this year. So for this year, we really want to get the 2020 roads designed this fall. have those numbers in our pocket in December when we start the budget process next year, rather than just take a guesstimate of what they're going to be as you guys go through your budget process. I want to go through these other things. On the aggressive schedule for completion of all engineering, we have the design work for all the roads for 19 and for the 19 construction year. The bids, the work is due back on April 15th. You saw on a slide or I'll talk about it, I guess, later on a slide. We have set our target of having that in hand and ready to go by the end of it. So we've got half a month built into the schedule from the time that they're supposed to get the work to us, and we're ready to come back to the mayor and talk about it. We're starting more and more to use these pre-bid meetings. We have one scheduled tomorrow, to minimize the excessive addendums in the projects. You have a pre-bid meeting, you try to identify all the problems up front. You try to get the engineering firm, the construction firm locked down, so they're hearing it then, not when they're out on the road somewhere and giving you a change order. We implemented this year these bi-weekly construction progress meetings between the road project managers and the construction companies. That's helped to identify problems. It hasn't helped to solve problems necessarily, but it's helped to identify them long in advance of when we might otherwise have known about them. And the last bullet there, use multiple contractors. I can't state that enough. So further in the lessons learned in 2019, while we've added in-house engineering design capability, in fact just this week I guess, we still need to use outside design engineering firms to do a lot of the work. It's just too much that we're talking about doing. We're talking about doing 11.2 miles of road this year. So that's more than we can do in-house. But with the additional resource in-house and the contractor project management that we're going to use, we think we can significantly reduce expenses, where before what we did, I think last year we used M&M, Warren McBroom, to do the construction project supervision. We feel we'll save between $200,000 and $300,000 this year by the process we put in place. One thing that became clear pretty quickly was that our boilerplate contracts need to be reviewed. And I know that DPW and town attorney are working on a redraft. I believe the date for that is sometime in the middle of March.
Nope, next week.
Next week, all right. I like hearing that. That's terrific. One of the giant lessons learned is you cannot trust Frontier and Eversource. These guys will promise you and they don't show up. They don't show up. Oh yeah, look, October 1st, we'll have all those poles on there.
That's true.
They don't mean that. Those poles are still there now, and it's not, as far as I know, it's long past October 1st. In addition to these two, we have to charter and Aquarion are also part of these major reconstructions. So you're bringing 4 firms who have a sort of an ability to coordinate with themselves, but really they have, in many cases, no financial incentive to work with us. So the problem becomes a giant political problem that falls on DPW and the mayor to try to work out as best they can, along with help from John Whitman, who's got some experience, at least on one of those, in the electrical part of that world. And the last point, again, we've been doing this. We've started already for the 2019 roads. Advanced coordination with citizens. We had one meeting in this room for Pickett District in Erickson, and there were several things that came up at that meeting, and they were useful to the thinking about how those roads should be worked on. And so we're going to have public input sessions for all roads that are part of the 2019 plan. So the next is, these are the roads that we're going to work on from a capital perspective. The survey work has been awarded for all of them at this point. I want to just touch on what our priorities are. You heard John talk about PCI, the pavement condition index. So when we think about priorities for the roads, we talk about pavement condition index, we talk about average traffic counts, how busy is the traffic on the road. We talk about what is the remaining road life. You know, if you've got a road that hasn't been touched in 30 years, there's probably not much life left versus one that's been touched 5 years ago. We try to do a cost-benefit analysis on that. How much work, how much level of effort do we have to put in, and what are we going to get back for that in terms of how long is the road going to be useful? And lastly, but certainly far from least, safety. You know, safety will move you right up to the top of the charts on this. These are the costs and the length in feet. We convert that to miles. It's 8.9 miles. And it's 7.4 million. If you did a straight ratio comparison to this year, you'd say, well, gosh, we got more bang for our buck last year. And part of that was we did more mill and pave last year. This year is going to be more reconstruction than mill and pave. And so the average cost per mile is going to go up by $150,000 or so in these roads. You can look at some and just by reading them off. Second Hill is 1.5 miles, and it costs $1.5 million, so it's $1 million a mile for that road. You can't do the math probably, but I've done it for you. If you look at Fordyce, that's a half a million for half a mile, and that's $1 million a mile. So you can look at something like Mist Hill, which is 7/10 of a mile, and only costs $400K a mile. So, but you can tell by looking at that list that it leans towards reconstruction. This is part of our effort to address, I'll talk about this a little later, you've got a portfolio theory of roads, right? You've got some that are terrific, you've got some that are terrible, and you've got a lot that are sort of in the middle. So the best way to improve the PCI overall, assuming that you're dealing with safety and you're dealing with the cost benefit, is to work on the bad PCIs to the extent you can. So here's the bad news for the town.
Yeah.
The plan calls for 11.2 miles. Included in that is something that we didn't talk about at this stage last year, which is the 1.8 million, which is for local roads, which is normally inside, and it will be inside the DPW's budget, as it has been in prior years. We're adding a category here that we did not have last year, contingencies. We're arbitrarily setting that at 10%. We have no idea if that's We assume we're going to be under that, but we truthfully really don't have much of an idea about that. We did not have a contingency in our numbers last year, and I think when the final results for Long Mountain and Squire Hill are known, we'll see that it would have been good to have a contingency for that. The contract inspection, these are the people that we're hiring to do the work that was formerly done by the design engineering firms. And as I said, we'll save somewhere between 200 and 300K by spending that. I talked about getting 2020's design work now, not in this year. We're budgeting $500,000 for that. This year, it looks to me like we're going to spend something on the order of 470 for the design. When I say this year's, that's the design work where we've let the contracts already. So it's about the same number for 2020. We haven't yet picked the roads for 2020, but we're close. Generally, our process for that is, this represents what we'll call year one. We figured out pretty much, and we pretty much have agreements between the DPW and the road committee as to what the road should be for 2020. We have picked roads for 3, 4, and 5, but that's kind of wavy grid. Things could happen. You could, big flood could gut a road, and we don't know about that yet. So as we'll get closer, we'll lock those down. And as I said before, this is not this. Oh, I'm already on my next slide. That's good. That's John Whitman's idea of telling me to speed it up. Get going. So we repaired 7.2 miles for $6.8 million. I said earlier that I'll give you the numbers on mill and pave. 75% of the roads in 18 were mill and pave. It's going to be about 44% in 19. I want to talk a minute about street scan because we brought that up to you last year. It seems to us to be a powerful tool. I want to describe some of the differences. We went back to them and we asked them, can you do roughly 25% of the roads a year for the next few years? I said, of course we can. So we did that, and you saw the preliminary pie chart of what that worked out to be. Two things that are different going forward. When they did the 2017 roads, Street Scan assigned a PCI for the road based on the lowest or the worst section. So a given road might have looked better or worse than it was just by the fact that it got the PCI the lowest section. So working with DPW, we said, look, can you go back and give this to us in 500-foot segments? They said, sure, we can give it to you in 500-foot segments. And they did that for the 2019 numbers that John talked to you about a little while ago. We've now gone back and said, look, okay, that's great. We want you to do that for the 2017 data that's already in the bank. So now we can look 500 feet by 500 feet, road by road. And we didn't waste the money we spent on 2017. So now we can look each by each. And the key to that, two keys to that are the last two bullets on this thing. One is it'll lower our cost per mile because we won't be telling design engineers, oh, this road has a PCI of 12. We'll say this segment has a PCI of 12, but this over here is about 40. So what we want you to do is to give us a plan that deals with those in segments. Now, it may not be in every 500-foot segment you jump around, but you may be able to get 2 or 3 different segments with 2 or 3 different levels of effort on the same road, and therefore the price is going to go down. The last point is, on this slide, the last point is that this gives us a way to audit. We can audit ourselves, we can audit the DPW, how did they do year over year? We look at the PCI, we look at the segments of the road, we can tell something. It gives us a way to audit our construction companies. Same thing. 5 years ago, you fixed Long Mountain Road. Now it sucks again. Mm-hmm. You're toast.
Yeah.
It gives us a way to audit our design companies.
That's it.
You said it should be like this, and it turned out we have water gushing across that road still, despite your heavy-hitting drainage plan. Okay, what are we going to do? End of April, we're going to have the 9 roads designed. We're going to have the construction RFPs issued and returned by the end of May. Because we will negotiate with the contractors, select them by mid-June, have the negotiation process complete by the end of June. This means instead of September 1, we can start construction start of the FY, July 1. And we believe we can be substantially complete by November 1 to do that. And once again, this is a case where multiple awardees reduce schedule risk. You're not asking a guy, we had one firm on the design side where they said, we can do more. And we looked at it and we said, how would you do more? They said, we do it sequentially. We said, you're out. What you have, you can keep, but you're not getting any more. These are the local roads that are in the budget. 2.3 miles, 1.8 million. This is lower than, this is about 783K per mile. A lot of roads really needing a lot of work on this list too. And so that's what totals to be 11.2 miles. So I started, we're in year 2 of this plan. Think of it as a portfolio, good, bad, and mostly indifferent. The 5-year plan is to upgrade a small portion of the worst roads every year and do systematic maintenance, because that's something we weren't able to do for a long time. So we're now, I think the town is committed, I know you guys are committed to it. Systematic repair and maintenance, being consistent on the funding, knocking off the roads, as many as we can of the worst roads every year, improves the quality of the portfolio. And the annual PCI process, well, that allow the mayor and the town council and the road committee to do a lot of evaluation of the progress towards our overall road quality.
I'm glad this is the short version.
Remember last year's, it went on twice as long.
You know, there's something to be said about the horse and buggy and dirt roads.
There is, there is. Oh, they were very muddy. Okay, we're kind of closing off here. I think I got 2 slides to go. Our process, a rolling 5-year capital plan. First, you guys approve a year, it falls off, we add a year on the end. Our priorities are, as I said before, PCI, average traffic counts, road life, cost benefit analysis, safety. The key thing is citizen input here. I'm always surprised whenever I go to one of these meetings, either on a road or a bridge, the vast number of opinions people have about what they should, what their road should look like. Most of which comes down, in a lot of places anyway, too. Don't fix my road. I hate driving on it, but don't fix it, because people will go too fast if you fix my road. Which, of course, we don't take that in. This is the 5-year plan, 5-year capital plan. These are big numbers. They're big numbers in a world where you guys are going to fund a library, do some other things, maybe with roofs, eventually. We started in last year with 53.4 miles in the poor fare condition. We'll be 83% finished with the poorest roads at the end of 5 years if we buy this plan. This plan goes forward. We're going to change things up. I highlighted 2021 and 21-22. Despite what I said about working to not have roads roll over, we think that we have to plan that some will roll over. We won't hit a home run on all of that. So in this year we're doing 8.9. We're forecasting 8.1, but at a much lower cost. So those will be easier roads to repair. The level of effort on those will be nowhere near as great. The following year, we'll do substantially smaller roads, and we'll spend about 3/4 of the same of the amount of money. At that point, we'll pick up and go back to the tempo we had before. We think there's a need to consolidate, need to understand where we're at, and we think that at the end of this, as I said, we'll have a PCI that's probably in the mid-70s to high 70s. So. So I'm not going to speak to the slide because I know Walter doesn't care.
No,
better roads.
Walter can also read.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying not to read. I'm trying really hard not to read. So better roads, more businesses come to town. Real estate values go up. And I just want to close with that we place value engineering at the core of our thinking going forward.
Thank you.
What's that?
Thank God. Thank you.
And
About time.
yeah. And so this last slide, I just want to talk for a second. You guys have to make a, could I have one more slide?
Oh.
Yeah, give me one more. One more? Yeah, that one. So you guys have, your job is to make the tough decisions on resource allocation. Our job is to tell you what we think we need. And we know there's never a perfect time to spend money on infrastructure. There's never, why, we got this year, no problem, we got gazillions of spent. Although I'm glad to hear that we're a better credit risk than the government.
Yeah.
That was good to hear.
Have been for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah, for a while maybe, at least in the short term. So, our little pitch to you is that we have a road improvement plan. If we walk off that track, we'll be right back where we were in 2016 in a couple of years. It won't take very long at all. And as we heard earlier, the demand for our bonds is excellent. Interest rates are surprisingly attractive. And so now's the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Katie.
thank you for the process that you've put in place
Thank you.
for oversight of yourselves, but also of contractors and the follow through. And I look forward to seeing this throughout the years. It's very
Any
nice.
other questions? Any questions?
Talking.
Is it good to go late on the agenda?
Well, that helps.
Great job.
Very few
Yeah.
questions.
Great job.
Thanks.
So again, want to thank the Municipal Roads Committee, the DPW
Yes.
team,
All of you.
our contractors. We're continuing to streamline this process because we're all committed to making this program world-class. So we're going to continue to itemize that and continue to work for our taxpayers to make our road program, as I said this morning at our meeting, the best. And also, becoming the best, we can lower our cost per mile for our roads, which means we can do more roads. So again, I want to thank you guys
Thank you all.
for all your
Thanks, Mike.
efforts. Thank you. Next,
So,
Dan, Parks and Rec. So just as
Good evening,
Oh,
everyone.
hi.
Hi, Dan. So just a real quick segue. With the new charter change, the reason why Dan's here is part of the charter change is the town council has to approve the fee structure. The fees have already been approved, I believe, by the Park and Rec Commission already. So Dan's coming just to update
Yeah.
the town council.
Okay, I think everybody has a handout that I gave the mayor. It's our fee structure for this year. Most items we have increased over the year to bring in greater revenue. This covers above and beyond our expenses. One new fee that came up after the charter revision was the senior fee for park stickers for seniors. There's never been a charge in the past for a senior sticker. This year, the Parks and Recreation added a fee of $20 for a senior. The reason for that is that when we go forward with our new security system at Lindeming Park, the RFID tags that are going to go on each vehicle could cost anywhere between $6 and $7.50 a piece. So to cover that cost, the Park and Rec Commission added that charge. We expect our revenues to go up this year with all the different changes we've had to cover what you guys have recommended. So I'm here to ask your approval on that increase.
Katie?
Thanks, Dan. So I did have a question next to that, now you've explained it. How does our boat slip charge, which I see has gone up, how is that comparing with Brookfield?
Brookfield, I'll get that number for you. Where'd you bring it with me?
And I was going to ask you the same question about the non-resident program and athletic fees.
Okay,
Because they do the same thing, I would imagine.
correct.
Just curious if we're below or above.
Okay, sure. Well, you're talking about boat slips. Brookfield does not have slips, they only have a ramp.
Oh, I thought they had slips there.
No, I don't believe so. I think they just.
Oh,
They got the marina
it must be the
there.
private ones,
Yeah,
I
private
think
That's all
they are.
private.
Okay, how about for the non-resident programs?
We have gone up.
Do they have the same?
I don't have the numbers on that, but we have gone up. We always used to charge a nominal fee. We doubled that this year.
Yeah, I see that. And I think what you have here is pretty good. The multi-use fee for a group, what constitutes a group?
It's a group that wants to use, for example,
Many.
Lindeming Park.
Yeah, but how many people? What's the maximum? Could I come with 1,500 people?
Well, no, the maximum I believe that we let in to Lindeming is 50 people with a group.
50, okay, good. And this last question, under the summer playground, so I like that you've bumped those up a little bit. I have no idea whether or not what you're charging covers the cost of the program. Does it, Eleanor?
No. That program has never, historically, that program has always been asked to cover 75% of the cost. That's a
Okay.
partially
Are you
self-sustaining program.
but are you meeting the 75%?
Yeah, I think this year we're gonna be close to 78, maybe more than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to be fair and all, I'm just curious. So,
Correct.
great, thank you, Dan.
Mike?
Yep, thanks for coming, Dan.
You're welcome.
The senior vehicle sticker, the regular vehicle is 60? Am I reading
$60.
that right? And it only costs like $7.50 for a sticker?
Correct.
So how did the committee decide on 20? Because
They
I'm kind of
fe-
partial to seniors, you know. have
Yeah,
to-
I understand, yeah. I think they felt since everyone else was paying 60, they felt the $20 fee was reasonable. They went back and forth with it. There was some commission members that did not agree with it. They felt there should be some charge, but there were some people said.
Do you have a lot of seniors that have stickers?
Last year we gave out stickers, so we gave out about 400 stickers.
How many?
Over 400 stickers. So this year, if we had to buy 411 RFID stickers at $7.50 a piece,
Yeah.
you're talking over $3,000.
And I know, Dan, when we spoke at our weekly meeting, if there is a senior that cannot afford that, they can go to see you and the commission, and you guys on a case-by-case basis could.
Yeah, and we work with social services
Yep.
quite often on other people that can't afford things like that.
Oh, perfect. That's what I needed. Thank you.
Dan, just quickly, they're treated the same as any other sticker, so they could have other people with them, right?
Correct.
Okay. There's no other differences in their abilities or?
No, they can bring in
whatever?
any, as long as whatever they can fit in their car.
Got it. Thanks.
And just real quick on on a whole topic with Park and Rec, is I do meet with Dan weekly, and the numbers that they had projected to the council, we talk about that weekly, and they're looking to be able to hit that target as a total basis. And I'm just very pleased that, what the Park and Rec, what Dan's been able to do with the staff.
Thank you.
I just wanted to commend you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ellen.
So we want to make a motion for the fees?
Yes, I'd like to move that we approve the Parks and Rec fee schedule per the attachment.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for your patience.
Thank you very much.
Next is,
Could we, Mayor, could we do the public hearing and ordinance votes first, just to get it out of the way?
Yep.
In case we should decide to.
absolutely. Want to make a motion to move that from
Yes, I'd like-
15 to 14?
Yes, I'd like to move item 15, public hearings, ordinance repeals, up to item 14.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, got the public
Okay.
hearings.
Yep.
These were all done at our public hearing. They were
Yep.
closed, so we have the ability, yes, Matt?
Gotta do one at a time.
Yep. So
Okay.
we have the ability to act
each
on
one.
these, each one tonight.
Okay,
Councilman-
so,
Councilman?
move that we approve the repeal of ordinance Chapter 2, Article 13, Section 2-149, membership.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Move that we take the action to repeal ordinance Chapter 2, Article 5.
Now, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Is that correct?
No.
It would be
That
5
can't be
if you're
correct.
putting that
That's not correct.
Alternates to conservation.
Yeah, we'll
Commission.
just, we'll put the article in.
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Item C, move to repeal ordinance Chapter 2, Article 19, Section 2-167, membership.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next is discussion.
It's backwards, okay. It's item, on item B, it's actually Article 15.
Backwards.
Yep.
Gotcha. Thank you. Next is a discussion of possible action on a contract with Celtic Energy. So we have Walt from Celtic. And just as kind of a summary before Walt gets in here, we've been working on this for the past year. And what Walt's basically going to be talking about is we have an opportunity
Thank you.
through energy savings costs to actually allow us to get more infrastructure improvements done to our infrastructure, both here and the Board of Education. We've had multiple meetings with the Board of Education and with myself. Councilman Esposito as well has been to a few of these meetings. And it's all in efforts to look at using our energy savings to fund more of our infrastructure. So Walt?
We can go to 10:30.
Yes.
So, Mr. Mayor, this is not electric pricing, this is infrastructure.
So, yes.
Something totally different.
Yep, so Walt.
Great.
This is for this.
Oh, I already have that one. I think we had it in our packet.
Did you? The letter? Randy's letter?
You mean Randy's letter? Yes.
Oh, it's in there already?
Or I somehow divined it.
Yes, ma'am.
Figured out your computer.
Did you get it? All
That's a
right.
small victory.
Yes, it is.
Hey, Walt, can you spell your last name for Elaine?
Yeah, Donzila. It's on the last page of your
Yep.
document.
Thank you.
Okay. There you go.
Okay.
Elaine, can you pass? Can you keep one passes
Yeah,
to
good
Walter
work.
and Mike?
Well, thanks for having me up here tonight. I represent Celtic Energy. I'm the Director of Business Development for the company, Celtic Energy. Basically, I'm going to give you a little bit of a slideshow tonight and presentation. You have the hard copy of it already. First few slides are about Celtic Energy and what we do, and the last group of slides are about performance contracting. And I can expand or contract on either side depending on what your wishes are, and I'll go through it kind of quick, and I'll leave time for questions at this late hour. Basically, to put it in a very short story, Celtic Energy is an energy efficiency and sustainability engineering consulting firm. We're based in Glastonbury, Connecticut, and as of 1/1 this year, we became a part of NV5, which is a large engineering holding company, owns about 40 different engineering firms around the country. That does not change anything we do. We're the only company in the NV5 portfolio that does performance contract oversight and quality assurance, so that's why they acquired us. So everything we've been talking about for the last 8 or 9 months is nothing's changed. We're still in Glastonbury. Everything is the same. We do the same kind of work. If I could. Now I have to figure this out. There we are. Okay. Now I know what the button is. All right, so these are just a couple of things that we're going to talk about real quick. Who are we? Basically, I've given you a little bit of an idea of who we are. We're based in Glastonbury, but we do work all over the United States. We have done a tremendous amount of work in our bread and butter area, which is performance contract oversight. I'm referring to energy savings performance contracts. There aren't too many people in the country who really do this, maybe 20, 30 companies. We have done over 125 of these projects worth $2 billion. We do a lot of different services for energy consulting in addition to that, which are all listed below here. Pretty much the same as a lot of other energy efficiency consultants. But our bread and butter is working as an owner's agent or an owner's rep on major energy projects. Now that includes performance contracting, microgrids, renewable energy installations, and a lot of other things. But the expertise we have is as an advisory consultant. We are not a designer. We are independent from ESCOs and the designers so that we represent the client's interest. So essentially, when a town, a school system, a state government, anybody enters into a major energy project, we represent your interests. The same way that a lawyer would represent your interests for legal matters in a big lawsuit, we represent you kind of against the energy industry to make sure your interests are protected. So in a nutshell, that's a good description of what we do in most cases. Relevant experience of our company. Well, we've served in Connecticut as the owner's rep for a number of Connecticut municipalities and public school systems. We do this, as I said, all over the country. We have clients like the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force. We have the Department of Veterans Affairs, 5 state governments, and several large cities, including Phoenix, Arizona, where we're currently overseeing 5 performance contracts. So we do it all the way from the top with the feds down to small towns, school systems, and in Connecticut, because we're here, we work a lot with the municipalities and the towns. We were the author of the Connecticut ESPC Best Practices Guide in 2011. This is something that we were chosen to do when we wrote it. We did this under a grant that came through DEP, etc. Unfortunately, the state government in Connecticut has not embraced this program and is not doing things at a state level. The good news is, at the town level, everybody's doing it, so it's really good for you. We are also a CCM-approved vendor for this particular task that we do, ESPC Owner's Rep. And we also do energy audits, benchmarking, and a number of other typical services. We were also pre-vetted by the Connecticut Department of Administrative Services, so we hold a DAS contract. That means any public entity can hire us without an RFP, and you can use their contract and just issue us a PO. So we make it easy for people to hire in Connecticut. A couple of logos of our clients who have we worked for. Town of Wyndham, Tallinn, City of Hartford, City of Stamford. We are a PACE provider or overseer in Connecticut. That is, we do the technical reviews for PACE projects. We work for a number of universities here, etc. There's several others too, but this is a smattering of our clients right here in Connecticut. Our value proposition, I've kind of gone over that a little bit. We're one of the most successful firms in the country. We have worked in 35 states doing this, and we bring best practices knowledge. That's something that's really interesting and it's often overlooked, but it does help you because we have done it in so many different climates and so many different types of people. And there's different politics at every level of the game, and you learn how to get around certain issues and be able to move projects forward. In fact, the federal government refers to what we do as project facilitation, not as owner's representation. Because not only do you have to represent the owner, you have to make damn sure the project actually gets fixed.
Right.
Okay, which is, I think is a great term for it, although nobody outside the feds uses the term. Okay? We do full scope support all through all the phases of performance contracting or any other type of energy project you have. From scoping out what you want to do, from helping you develop a plan for the town, which we're currently doing for the city of Danbury, we just started this month, and bringing it all the way through completion and fruition of the project to measurement and verification of the savings afterwards, so you get what you paid for. And we have leadership positions on a lot of national boards and with a lot of national associations. I myself am a board member of Connecticut REBA, the Renewable Energy and Efficiency Business Association. So I'm kind of one of those guys who goes into the State House with the lawyers and lobbies. I have to deal with the politicians at the state level trying to change the laws so you guys can save money on your contracts. Trust me, it is a thankless job, and those guys are hard to work with. But we made some progress this year. We got both parties to agree on a project. The Green Bank put up the money, and then we went to DEP, and they shot it all down because they didn't want to do anything. So they went back to square one, and now it went back to the legislature, and here we go again in 2019. But the good news is a lot of that's at the state level. At the town level, you don't have to deal with that. Okay? Performance contracting basis. Basics. For people who don't know what this is, I'll go through this rather quickly, and you can read the slides in detail in the handouts. Basically, ESPCs were invented so public entities could do energy projects to fix up their infrastructure. And they did it because obviously everybody has trouble coming up with money. You've got to borrow money, you have to bond for money, etc. And they said, what if we could find a way to do this where you can borrow money, the money is paid back through the energy efficiency, that is the energy savings in the contract, and so the town doesn't have to come up with money to do it. So essentially you're already paying for it by paying an electric bill. When you do one of these projects, it comes back to you for the same rate, so no more money is required. The reason this works is because it's a performance contract. That means the party who does the work guarantees the performance. So if you come up short on cash to pay the electric bill when they finish, they have to pay the difference. So it's kind of like a no-brainer. You put this contract vehicle into place and it works. And if it doesn't work, somebody else pays the freight. So the town has minimal risk in it. That's what the whole thing is about. Typical ESPCs are done in 5 phases. I've kind of gone over a little bit with you what they are, but you go from conception to development of a scope and an issuance of an RFP. Then you look at vendors, then you choose a vendor, an ESCO, which is an energy services company. That's like a Honeywell, a Siemens, a Trane, something like that. They do a huge investment grade audit. We help you negotiate the contract for that, and then we oversee the audit, which is a huge amount of work on the upfront side. This is to define your energy project exactly the way you want it to be. And this is where we come in and really start representing you. Then you implement and construct the project, and afterwards you do post-implementation measurement and verification because you have to make sure it does work as planned. So this can go on for a minimal of about 3 years. It can go on through the length of the construction loan, which is usually about 20 years, 15 to 20 years. It just depends on the laws of the individual state. Connecticut doesn't mandate it, but anybody who thinks about it ought to be doing it for at least 3 years because you have to make sure it works. That way you don't have any repercussions if it doesn't. Okay, I mentioned before, it's reallocating your current spending, not to add debt to your town, and it will not degrade your credit rating. I had just had a long conversation with one of Moody's senior VPs about this, and there's some people who are worried about it, but in general, the rating agencies understand this stuff, and they don't rate you down if you go and borrow money for these energy projects, because they know it's paid from the money you're already spending, not from new money you have to squeeze from taxpayers. And here's a real good graphical depiction of what it looks like. Before you start your contract, i.e. now, you're paying that blue section in a utility bill. During the course of the contract term, you're paying a utility bill. You're also paying that white area, which is the financing or the loan payment on the contract, and the top is the owner's share. That can be down to zero, it can be a little bit of yellow. It varies on the particular project. At the end of the contract, you're still paying a utility bill, but now the cost savings are up top. So 15, 20 years down the road, your utility bill is smaller than it was before, and you've done all this on borrowed money funded by what you're already paying out, not having to add any additional outflow of cash.
It takes that long down the road to get to this last bar?
Well, the typical period of performance, it's called the performance period, which is how long it takes to pay back the loan, essentially. And that's usually 12, 15, it goes as much as 20 years in the state of Connecticut. The average is probably like 15. I'd say that's typical. Financing options, you know about the various things that a municipality can use. Tax exempt lease purchase agreement, TELP, is one of the areas that's used most often with the ESPC vehicle. And the ESCO that you hire helps arrange all that. So you don't have to do it. This is part of what you're paying for. And we, as an advisor, are here to help you through that process as well. I think we talked a little bit about this already, so I'll go over it quickly. You finance it through a lease purchase agreement. Your cost savings will exceed your annual payments. If for some reason your cost savings come up short of your annual payments that you have to make, the ESCO is on the hook for it. They have to kick in the difference. Okay? That's what performance contract means. Okay? They have to perform. So the savings are paying for improvements. Everything you can throw in waste services, maintenance. You can take a look at all kinds of ECMs, energy conservation measures, from upgrading windows, boilers, chillers, adding solar panels, control systems, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, you name it, anything can be thrown into this lump sum. And you can do it for multiple facilities. You can do the whole town, you can do all your school systems, you can make it as big or small as you want. The bigger it is, the more cost effective overall. Okay? And there's two contractual agreements. You have an agreement between the agency or owner, which is the town, with the ESCO. The ESCO guarantees the payments to the financier, but the funding arrangement is between the financier and the town. Okay? So you're dealing with the bank, you're dealing with the ESCO, and should the payment come up short, the ESCO has to kick in the money. Right? So in a nutshell, that's performance contracting, 30,000-foot view of this. And this is the vehicle used all over the country for this. Another graphical depiction of a long-term financing. On the left, you're paying those blue lines, which is what your current utility costs are. During the financing term, let's say it's 15 years, you're doing, the blue is your payment of utility costs, and the savings and payments for the upgrades, that's what's going on, and you're paying back on the loan is that orange part. And then once the financing term ends, you're paying the blue utility rate, but that green box is what you're saving. And the avoided costs, this is just a depiction that there may be some future avoided costs on the plan as well. So essentially, you're cutting your utility bill and using that to fund all your new infrastructure for energy without having to lay cash out for it. And our fees, as your owner's rep, are on a sliding scale, which I had submitted to the town some time ago. Our fees are part of the project cost, so they're financed right in. Or you could pay cash them. You could do anything you want, but if you want to finance it, it's all covered as part of the project cost. One example I brought for you, Town of Tolland. They did a $10.2 million contract, ESPC, that started about 6-7 years ago. 18 facilities, 700,000 square feet, and they had annual savings of $573,000. And part of this, part of our role is to secure incentives, grants, and rebates. and we were able to secure them $900,000 as their owner's rep. So we saved them that much on the project, plus the annual savings of their electrical costs. What do? New building automation system, lighting controls, lighting, HVAC upgrades, high efficiency boilers, water conservation measures, low flow toilets, etc., weatherization improvements, and a ground source heat pump. This is a type of HVAC unit that's been installed at the 2 largest schools that they have. So, big project. We're now in phase 5, measurement and verification, and we're still doing that. We're a couple of years past the implementation stage. So, Colin was a good example of what you'd be doing. You're probably a little smaller than them, or maybe, but it's similar. And my contact information's on the last one.
Okay.
Any questions for Walt?
There's no real
Tom?
risk to the town?
Mike, I didn't hear you.
There's no real risk to the town?
Financial risk, you mean? Virtually nil.
Right.
Virtually nil. That's what this whole thing was invented for, to do.
So it's just like in my office when I got the lights, and you get the mortgage out for the lights, and pay for it, and save energy, and it doesn't cost me anything.
Yeah, this is kind of a grander scale thing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
This is on the grander scale of what PACE or CPACE does for businesses or parishes.
Well, the thing with CPACE,
But it's on their tax bill at CPACE.
right, it's a little bit different, but CPACE doesn't have any guaranteed performance
Right.
by the contractors,
Right.
which is what this thing, differentiates ESPC from everything.
From everything else.
Guaranteed. Yeah.
Listen, this is a program we've been talking about for many years here. I'm in the energy business. I've spoken to you privately on other projects for CPACE. This is a no-brainer. You're using what your existing spend is, and that spend stays the same, but you're using that savings to
Right.
finance these upgrades. Now, these upgrades not only will save us money, but it'll improve the comfort of many of these buildings, which many of them are uncomfortable. It'll improve the indoor air quality dramatically.
The value of the
The
building.
values of the buildings. It will help us continue on our mission as a clean energy community, which we signed that pledge many years ago. Many of the people who are doing energy audits on their homes, we get points for that. This is a great step forward for that. It'll make our town more attractive to businesses and people that want to live in cleaner, more green communities. It can dramatically affect the air quality of this town.
Right.
If we can get away from fossil fuels in many of our buildings, as I said earlier, trying to come up with a package that is all-inclusive, driving solar panels onto our schools, into some of our municipal buildings that are not in our historic district, which may be unsightly, but our schools sure could become gigantic power generation sources for us, giving them a level of autonomy. I applaud this. I really am looking forward to this.
We've been talking about it a while.
We've been talking about it for a long while.
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer, and thank you very much for coming and staying so late. How is it determined what building gets what? Who decides that, okay, the town hall is gonna have a new heat pump instead of a furnace?
Right. What happens is the whole process is that 5-step process that's on one of the slides. The first part is a preliminary assessment. This is where we come in and work with you to say, what facilities are we going to include? And basically, one that's very small and there's not a lot of bang for the buck, you might want to leave out. The bigger facilities, a town hall, the schools, a police station, yeah, you want to throw in that. So we work with you and we try to decide what we want to include. And then we go around and we kind of look at this with you and say, all right, we think that these are the types of things that need to be done. Boilers, ground source,
Okay.
whatever it is. Then we help you draft a request for information or a request for proposal. That goes into an RFP. We go out to the world of the ESCOs and we say, okay, who wants to bid? They come back with bids, we help you evaluate them. Then you choose one ESCO. We sign an IGA, investment grade audit agreement between you and the ESCO. At that point, the ESCO does a very full-blown energy audit, 20 times what we've already done. And they go through, this is an expensive, long process, takes like 6-8 months. We oversee every step of the way and we help you understand what they're doing. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of it. So you get everything you want, and the things that you're not sure of and you don't know about, that's why we're there, to help you. We know that, hey, this is a good idea, this one, you know, don't worry about it. This is not a good way to go.
So what is your commission on this, depending upon how much upgrade there is? Is it
No,
like-
our fee is based on the actual project value. There's a sliding scale percentage. It runs around 2% for most of the work. So if it's a $10 million project, it's roughly like 2%. If it's a smaller project, it's a little larger. But that's included in the whole project cost that you can find, yes, if you choose.
When does that kick in? When the project is done?
Our fees start accruing as soon as we start working, but we have a special agreement through CCM that we will not charge the town, or you won't have to pay us until you get to the point of the IGA's finished and you're going to the loan for it. So you don't have to,
Better
you're
than
not
agreed.
required to kick the cash up front. But
Better.
if you choose to kick in the cash and not finance our fee, which is, you know,
Right.
that first part might be a $50,000 fee versus a $5 million project.
Okay.
You always have that choice. Yeah, you can finance it various different ways.
Okay.
Thanks, this fabulous.
All right, there's a motion, are you guys done?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to motion that we approve, I've been here too long, that we allow Mayor Bass to work on this proposed Celtic agreement contract on behalf of the town.
Second.
Any discussion? This was, as the letter states, Attorney Bellows reviewed
Yeah, I
it
saw it.
and approved it.
Yes, and we could include then in the minutes, Elaine, that
Yep, Elaine's got
you
it.
have a copy of the January 28th letter from the town attorney.
So, just one, before we do a second, so what happens then, Pete? So you're talking to them directly in a contract,
So
and you're ready
then
to-
we use Celtic, they would be our consultant.
so we're just voting on you setting up a
Approving it.
contract with these guys?
Approve it, yep.
You're giving him the right to do that.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Walter?
Thank
Motion
you.
to adjourn, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.